GrindWorks BMX, episode 042. That's so dumb. I hate that. Anyway, welcome back to another episode. This one was with Jeff and Mikki from Keystone RampWorks. They are a skate park that has been around for years, but they're kind of a new generation of it, as you'll hear in this podcast. They've been about 3 years now, working on a full-time location. So right now they're in the Wyoming Sports Dome in Wilkes-Barre, PA. I think it's Wilkes-Barre, whatever. I kind of suck at this. Anyway, check it out. Enjoy the episode. This is going to be the last of the coronavirus / skate park episodes for hopefully ever. Although I'll probably do some more of the skate park ones just without coronavirus. All right. Anyway, enjoy.
Casting with our puds. Should I try not to curse?
Are we allowed to curse? What are we allowed to do?
I don't care.
Are we not supposed to curse?
I don't care what you say.
Because our podcast is the family friendly, so everybody can listen, which I don't think matters, but
I feel like podcasts and like the way you access them is not necessarily like a little kid's thing. But
you would think.
But if you're listening in your car,
And then again, at the same time, like if you're looking for advertisers, I know a lot of advertisers will give you more or actually look at you if you don't curse. But then I also know a lot of filthy ones that get lots of money.
Right, exactly.
So yeah, that's a good intro.
Works for me.
We'll go with it.
Shit talking the podcasting business.
It's super lame. We're all a bunch of losers.
But we enjoy doing it, so it doesn't matter.
Sitting here at Keystone RampWorks. What is this place? Wyoming Valley Sports Dome?
Yeah, we're inside the Wyoming Valley Sports Dome. Or as the kids around here call it, the Dome.
The Dome.
Or we like to call it the Bubble.
Okay. You guys have been here 3 years.
This
This
is our third year, yeah.
Well, it's trying to be our third year
It's
anyway.
trying to be.
Yeah.
You've been here.
Yes, we've physically been here for 3 years. Are we allowed to be open right now? No.
And just for demographic purposes, Jeff and Mikki.
Yep.
And I mean, I guess what's your backgrounds in, like, what brings you to owning and operating a skate park?
She forced me to do it.
Yeah, it's my fault. So Jeff's the BMX rider. I initially wanted to do a coffee house that was aimed for all ages because me being from Massachusetts, we had coffee houses up there that we did live music for all ages. There was no alcohol involved. When he said that, he was considering doing a skate park, I'm like, that kind of ties together. I'm like, because the kids can come down here and ride, they can grab something to eat. It just kind of like helps the whole ordeal. So that's when we started looking at tying the two of them together, which, I mean, it does extend. Like the room that we're sitting in now, we utilize this for live music. During the summer when the skate park's going, we play the music out there for the most part. But it brings a lot of stuff to do. So it kind of helps from every avenue, and it gives kids, like brothers and sisters, that like one rides, the other one definitely wants nothing to do with it. If there's music going on or there's food involved, they're more willing to come down as a family. And they're like, okay, I have something else that I can do that's not riding at a skate park. So it works in both, avenues.
It seems like it probably works good with parents as well.
Yeah, the parents enjoy it. They get their coffee, they get to sit down and relax, and it's not like, just a picnic table or, just dropping the kid off.
Go stand against this broken railing for 4 hours and watch your kids ride.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we brought in the couches, the chairs, and all that. Because, I mean, the TVs and everything were already here, so we'll put something random on. If somebody wants to watch something specific, we could throw it on. It's not a big deal. But, I mean, it's just a comfortable place you could just come and hang out at instead of just dropping your kid off and, like you said, standing against a fence or whatever.
I just think back to like the East Coast Terminal days, and it was like, hey, go up on this sketchy balcony and lean against
Yeah,
the weird railing.
the parents' area is like this little shitty room off to the side that you have to go up this rickety staircase to, and you can sit there and watch through this little window that you can't really.
I
see much of
forgot
the
there
park.
was a room up there for the
Yeah.
parents to hang out in.
Was it upstairs or downstairs?
I think it was.
I know there was
you
room-
went up the stairs to the balcony, and I think it was off the balcony. There was a little weird room.
There
Well,
was-
I know Rye Airfield has the one because that's where I was
Well,
hanging
they have
out.
the whole mezzanine,
Right.
but ECT pretty much had the same thing, and I can't remember if it was because like when you get into ECT, they had
The original entrance.
one before it kind of got weird. You go in and pay, and like they have the whole pro shop and everything, and they had like these weird dentist chairs you could sit in. It was
like a
this-
barber chair, dentist chair.
barber
Oh,
chair.
man.
Oh, they were the best, and like pinball machines and shit. Then you go outside, and there was like a viewing area that had the wall, and then off to the side, and I think there was one upstairs and downstairs was the parents' area. I don't know if I was ever in there, and I don't think my mom was ever in there when she dropped us off. But like I guess it was quiet because it like had a door and everything to it. But there was a window that you could look, but the park was like an L shape, so you could only see
A portion of the park.
like the one wall. But I mean that place was still the best.
I totally forgot they had that weird
Yeah,
room.
dude. I never got the full tour of the building. A couple of my friends did, and I guess like that whole building was just a wild, like just weird SLC punk type building that was the weird shit went on.
Yeah, I think I saw most of it, but then again, like there were so many weird corners of those old manufacturing buildings in that era.
Yeah,
Who knows?
there's just shit all over the place. Like I just like turn a corner. Well, where's that door go? Oh, it goes upstairs, or you could go this way. Oh, okay. I'm not gonna worry.
Well,
about
or,
that.
or you like see a room and you're like, how do I get there? And it's like, haha, let me tell you.
Yeah.
Take a
I
left
still
and a
haven't
right
found
and go
it.
up and then come back down, and then eventually you'll make it over to that room.
Yeah, and then they moved the pro shop and everything over onto the other side of the building, or the other side of the mini ramp.
Yeah, and put like a more formal entrance in that was actually roadside.
Yeah, and it was then like that's when the whole vibe of the place started getting weird because they took out they took out the wall for the bike room. That was cool. And then when they started taking out the bike room, it was like, this is kind of losing all the fun stuff that we used to like to go here for.
Yeah, they moved the box jump out to the main park, and then
Yeah.
it was like, all right, I see what you did,
But
and you're trying to appeal to like this other group. But that was the era of like skate parks were changing too.
right,
It was going away from the classic vibe.
Yeah,
to,
it was like that was that weird transitional period where you still had that like old school X Games style skate park that was, that's how you made it. And now it's just you could kind of just make whatever you want and somebody will show up to it.
Street.
Or
Right,
you
that-
get
and
the
that's
street
the
plaza
big-
and there's either the street plaza that you make or you make the wheel mill. And there's really no middle ground, which because everything that we use from the Dome was like built in the late 90s, early 2000s, like we're dealing with that kind of skate park. So we have to sort of find that middle ground or just kind of, throw it up and see what happens.
I like that, and the last episode that I uploaded this morning was with Wedgwood Skate Park in Youngstown. They are the early 2000s skate park.
Yeah, I want to go out there.
It's super fun, and it's that like side to side transfer classic feel.
And everything looks like it's like 30 feet in between each ramp. So if you want to pedal at it and roast the shit out of a box jump, you could.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we were talking about it, and it's like, well, how long have you guys been here? And he's had it for like 11 years, but it was 3 parks prior to that, and they have the same ramps from
Nice.
early 2000s, and it's like,
Sure.
well, that makes perfect sense why your park built in like 09 is actually the early 2000s style. So, yeah, you were starting to get into that with your ramps. You have those classic ramp styles.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's not much that we can do to change it, but I mean, like this year, I wanted to build a hip, and I knew I had like the parts to do it, so it was just a matter of making it work, which is another nice thing about, like, it sucks that we do have to tear it down and put it back up every year, but it's also cool because a lot of it breaks down to like the very basic pieces. So if we wanted to do like the hip, for example, I could just say, okay, well, it's just a matter of making it work. Or even the pyramid, the smaller pyramid, like it's 4 sides, but
We don't have to use all 4
we
sides
haven't
to
used
it.
all 4 sides. This year we're only using 2 just because of the smaller layout and what we had to work around.
I noticed that you have like less area this year.
Yeah, we used the first year was about 12,000 square feet. Then the second year was about 10, and this year I think it's like 85 or 8,400 square feet, somewhere around there. But I mean, with the whole coronavirus, we didn't know
Yeah, so
if we were going to open, how we were going to open, at what capacity. So we figured if all else fails and we can't open, I have a fun place to ride for the summer by myself, and then it's not as much work to tear down.
Yeah, so what's that timeline for you guys? Because normally that's right about the time that you.
Right.
I'm
So-
sure that your coordination starts year round as to what you're going to do when you can get in here. But yeah, I'll let you go.
So normally what happens, and the reason our schedule is the way it is, the Dome does their sports season from November until March. There is a show that goes on for almost a week in between April and October. Most of the time we have to work around that show's schedule because they just take up most of the floor space. Because of what happened this year, we were allowed to start earlier, not aware that we were going to be shut down completely for months, but we were going to work with them. So they were going to work through the skate park instead of us just not putting the skate park up until a later date. And we're still looking at the same thing come October. So this year, once we're able to open, which is hopefully in a couple weeks, we'll be able to stay open until probably the second week in October, because it does take us a good week and a half to get everything broken down and out of the way for the sports season. But normally it is from April until September. So we got some wiggle room to make up a couple of those weeks if we get to open in a couple weeks. But that's usually why, and that's the other reason why we ended up going smaller, was so we could work around that show that goes on.
Okay.
So it's tricky, but it works.
And because we also rely a lot on volunteers to come and help put everything together, after work, after school, whatever. And we knew this year that with Corona and everything, we probably wouldn't get the help that we got. I mean, one of our employees was helping us, but at the same time, he lost his job, so he was driving for, I think, Uber or
Something,
DoorDash,
yeah.
something like that. I can't remember which one. So I only had him for a certain amount of time, which kind of worked out because it was the morning and I was out of work at the time, so we could just sort of show up, do it for a couple hours. All right, cool. Then I'd putz around a little bit, whatever I could by myself, and then off till the next day.
Okay. I had another thing I was going to say about that, and I don't remember what it was.
And nobody's asking you questions.
I was going to say, what were we
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
about tangents before we started?
Oh, yeah, no, it's totally good. No, it was. Oh, timing wise, I think I saw you guys were starting to just get everything started at the beginning of March, right?
Right, yeah.
So you started building in that week where everyone was like, "What are we gonna do? What can we do?"
Right.
And
Well, what happened there was during the winter, starting in January, on the weekends, this place is filled beyond what you could imagine or what you would make with a skate park in the winter with softball tournaments. So they usually run until about the end of March, but I mean, they start to taper off, so they might get canceled because this one only has 4 teams or whatever, however they get signed up. So once Corona started happening more in the States, parents and teams were pulling out because of that. And we were here and we're just like, oh, come on, really? Like, you're worried about that? Okay, whatever. And then it got to be, they're all done for March. So, okay, we jumped in, can we start? And we figured we'd be open the
Within
first
a
week
month,
of April.
yeah.
And then, second week of March they shut it. Wolfie shut everything down, and we were just like, well, I guess we'll just keep building, and whenever this blows over, we can get there.
It was 15 days. And that's-
Right.
Everyone's like,
first
all right.
it was 2 weeks, and then
So there was that weird week period where everyone thought they'd be able to continue doing stuff as long as they implemented social distancing in their businesses. And then it was like, no, you're all done.
Right.
Everyone is shut down.
And that was the thing too. Like we were laughing about it because so March 7th was like my timeline of how this all proceeded. We were supposed to have a softball tournament. We lost half the teams because most of these teams that are coming in are from New York, from New Jersey, from Virginia. So they already had it happening. They were already getting shut down. And we're down here getting phone calls. Well, are you closing for coronavirus? And we're like, what are you talking about? Like what? And like that same day, a couple hours later, they were like, we're canceling half of these teams. So we lost a ton of revenue just from those teams canceling that weekend. And then by, I think it was that Wednesday, so like the 11th or the 12th, they started announcing like you're going to lose your business license if you stay open. We're shutting everything down. You need to close. Sports was the first thing to go. So like anything that we did here, we were done. And there was like an uprising between me and the dome owner because he wasn't quite understanding like what was actually going on. He's like, we'll let golf go on. We'll let this go on. I'm like, don't do it. I'm like, you're going to lose your license.
even though they specifically mentioned golf courses.
Right,
or
golf courses,
like,
but
golf
we're
mentioned.
Indoors. Yeah, we're indoors, so it's a whole different. Like if he had a golf course that was outside, he absolutely could have stayed open. They never shut that down. At least
I thought they like did, and then
I think
everyone
it was for
petitioned
like
it.
a week.
Like
Yeah,
you literally
it
couldn't
wasn't-
have a more socially distanced
Right.
thing
Right.
that you're doing.
Right. So but I think that only happened for like a week realistically, and it wasn't for any of the courses around here, as far as I know. Like all of our local golf courses stayed open, and all they did was limit it to one person per cart, and like you had to stay like apart on the greens. But because we're inside, that's a whole different story.
Yep.
So once he heard that he was going to lose his business license, he was like, okay, we need to not do this. Yes.
Good call.
Yeah, but that whole week was just a mess of like, we don't know what's going on, but if we can start the skate park early, we're gonna, because we don't know when we're gonna be able to open, what we're gonna be able to do in
15 days, quote unquote.
Right, in
Right.
the hope that 15 days or a month we would be able to open, and that wasn't the case.
Yeah, and it's what, June?
Yeah, I think we're at like
6th,
80,
whatever it is, yeah.
days. I don't know. I lost count after 70. I was like, I'm done. I'm done counting. I don't care anymore.
I didn't even bother counting. Not worth it.
No, and it's just painful. The
Yeah.
more you really look at it, it's insane.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're still like, he was showing me the other day, like the state has one form up for the phases, because we're doing here in Pennsylvania the green, yellow, or what is it? Red, yellow, green.
Red, yellow, green, yeah.
And we were on a conference call last Friday with the Luzerne County Board, which is the county that we're situated in. And we had asked because we didn't know. We were like, we see it on the state website, but we're also seeing other things popping up of like how we're going to be able to operate. And they pretty much gave us like a no answer to the question of like, what's our capacity going to be in the green phase? And it was pretty much like, sporting's still not going on. We're like, that's not what the state says. So what is the county doing? So like nobody knows what's going on. And now it's been, I think, a week that I've been, phone calls and emails trying to get a hold of our health department, which would be the one that covers like how we're going to open and what capacity.
Yeah, well, and what capacity even means.
Correct.
Because if it's your like fire department capacity, then it's like zero impact on your daily business anyway.
Right,
And
exactly.
that was the thing too, because like, I mean, in theory you have, whatever it is, 76,000 square feet that the dome itself is, and we're operating in it. So do we go with our square footage that we're renting? Do we go with the entire building?
Right.
And do we include the building we're sitting in now that's attached to the dome? It's like, what do you go by?
I think the immediate answer would be whatever the fire department says your maximum occupancy is.
Right, and then you can't say, well, hey, that's what they say.
And if it's 25% of what, like probably 1,500 people or something, you're like
something like that.
You're
yeah.
like, okay, let's pack that out.
Right.
Like I will take 25% of that all day long.
Right.
But even with the social distancing and everything, like the way that everything out there is set up, everything is either 8 feet wide or 16. So if you stay 6 feet apart, all right, that's easy, just one person per deck.
Yeah.
And even if you have, the 16 footers, you got two people, they're 16 feet apart. So it's not. I think a lot of it is that you don't have anyone that really, and I mean, you'd never be able to have that has like a broad idea of how everything works. And even because I mean, this, like, you can easily social distance at a skate park, which is why it's so stupid to fill public skate parks with sand.
Yes.
Or, you know, anything to prevent anyone from riding them. Like, you're not, I don't know, it doesn't make, like, being in this for so long, it just doesn't make sense why half of the things are the way they are.
Still.
Right.
I think is really where it's like
Yeah.
right at the beginning, you're like, okay, why would you do that? But okay, like, just gate it and lock it.
Right. But even like, you know, shutting businesses down and everything, everybody hit the panic button when we had no idea what this is, and no one really pulled back and said, all right, this is what we knew then, this is what was wrong, this is what we know now. And instead of, you know, it was just hit the panic button, shut everything down, you know, pull the plug, instead of saying, you know, how can we keep the economy and everything open while still, you know, quelling this thing, which my opinion, all we had to do, leave everything open, you know, do the social distancing, the masks and everything. If somebody that works somewhere had it, everybody shuts down that business shuts down, self-quarantine, everybody self-quarantines for 2 weeks. They come in, you know, Lysol the shit out of the building, and then everybody tests again. If nobody else is positive, you can go back to work. And then
the
you only
first
lose 2
45
weeks at a time instead of now you're losing 2 months, 3 months worth
First
of
45
anything.
days of it, they told us not to wear masks.
Sure.
That too,
absolutely.
right? So it's also
Because
the
what,
right
they
hand don't
needed
know
to
what the
save
left
them
hand
for
doing.
medical.
Right.
Sure.
But yeah, then you're like, all right, well, either the masks work and we can resume normal life, or they don't and we shouldn't be wearing them anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't know what to believe, who to believe. So
Yeah,
But-
it's well, I guess we're all wearing just fabric masks anyway. So, like, are they helping anyone? No.
nope.
I mean, technically speaking, and I get where people are, you know, because I mean, I've gotten into enough Facebook fights, which, you know, the keyboard warriors, which we actually saw somebody today, which was a whole other problem because now they're wearing masks. They think they can just yell at people in a store because you can't see their face. So that's a whole other problem. But, you know, as far as what the actual virus is and the size of it, most masks will just let it come right through because it's just there's too much space
Yes.
within the fabric. So it's
But
like,
let's be real. If you sneeze, it's not just those tiny virus particles coming out. It's
oh,
a
sure, it's
mixture of a
everything.
bunch of mucus and
Absolutely.
everything.
So it's catching
all going to
most of
get
it.
caught.
Sure.
It's,
So it is doing good in that sense, absolutely. But at the same time, if you are a normal, healthy human being that knows how to have hygiene, you sneeze into your elbow. You're not just out there coughing at people and
don't be
so-
ridiculous.
And you would hope most people wash their hands, but we also know that that's not the case. So
We-
it's like,
It's amazing the number of times we had to listen to full-grown adults explain how to wash your hands, down to the fact of mentioning that you say the ABCs twice.
yes.
Use soap and water, and you're like, wait, is this not a known fact?
Right, yeah, it's scary to know how many people are not aware of how long it takes to wash your hands and like to kill germs and to do what it needs to do, or even the sanitizer situation where people, and we have it happen here a lot with the sports teams, they'll leave sanitizer in the bathroom instead of washing their hands. It doesn't do the same thing. Wash your hands.
Yeah, it's a
Like,
substitute
right.
for
It's
when
if
you don't have it.
Right.
have a sink around you or soap around you. But they'll use that instead of washing their hands.
But even
I'm like,
so, you
that's
read
disgusting.
you
I'm
read the
like,
container and it says it takes like 30 seconds to
It
do
only
anything.
it
or 10
only
seconds,
no it
something like
only
that.
works until it's dry. So you have to hope within those 10 seconds of putting sanitizer on your hands that it has killed everything that's on your hands, unlike washing your hands for 20 seconds in the sink. People don't get it. And it is amazing.
I think there was a little bit of oversight in what everyone was thinking right from the beginning, too, with the 6-foot thing. Because what they were saying was keep 6 feet of distance. And it's like, what you meant was,
Radial
If-
distance.
well, yeah. No, the stuff where it's like side by side is
Yeah.
2
Oh,
feet
man.
apart
Yeah.
at machines and stuff. But no, it was also like, if you must be around people. Like
Correct.
that's the absolute minimum distance you want to be.
Right.
It's not like 6 feet and you're good.
Right.
But that was one of the funny things to me. It was like, oh, well, yeah, we can be 6 feet apart. And it's like, yeah.
But do we
if
need
you
to be within any realm of each other right now?
Yeah.
And that's what people miss.
Yeah, and it was like, on one hand, I fully support, like, okay, if I can go to Walmart and buy my groceries, I can go to Michael's and buy craft supplies.
Mm-hmm.
But I think for like the first month, everyone was on board with that. And they're like, all right,
Sure.
whatever. Like,
Sure.
it is what it is. Then the next 2 weeks, everyone's like, why are we still doing this?
Right.
And even
And then the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks have been outright rebellion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's bound to happen.
But from the business standpoint, like, we should be given the option to fail by people choosing not to come,
Correct.
not by being held hostage by the government.
No,
and
absolutely.
I will reiterate that statement over and over every episode of this. Like,
Because that's what it is. It's not, and I understand the whole we're doing it for your safety. Well, that's fine and dandy, but no one really looked at the long-term effect of it, whether it's on the economy or even everybody's health. Like just wearing, even though I wear a cloth mask every day at work, I can still, like, I know that something's not right with my respiratory system or something like it. And it's not that well, maybe, who knows, maybe I do have corona, but if I get it, I get it. But like, it's just like my nose is constantly running just because I'm breathing in my own breath and carbon dioxide every day, all day. And it's like, that's not good for anyone. And then you got my boss that yells at me sometimes for not wearing it. Sometimes he yells at, it's like, if you're going to be open, and like I work in a machine shop, so we're easily 10 feet, if not more, apart from each other all day long. So the only time we're not is during lunch when we're sitting in the lunchroom and you don't have to have a mask on when you're eating. So, go figure with the whole 6 foot thing
the whole
anyway.
thing is stupid.
Yeah, it's just to the point. Like if you want to wear a mask, fine, but don't force me to wear one. Mm-hmm. But
Well, on
that's what we're supposed to do.
paper, in theory, right, your mask is catching 70%, whereas if you're wearing one because of me, it's only possibly 30% effective.
Right.
So that's like the tough one to make the arguments for. But
Well, the tough thing to make the arguments for are like restaurants. Like I said,
Yeah.
we have the cafe here. You can't tell people, well, you're only going to run at 50% capacity and you have to wear a mask while you're sitting in a restaurant. Okay, am I eating by osmosis? Like, how is that going to work? You have to physically take the mask off to be able to eat.
no, you just
So-
tuck the food up in it and smudge it all over.
Yeah.
Better be clean food.
You'll have ketchup all over your face. It'll be fantastic. But I mean, right, you're not in the sense of small businesses that do run restaurants, which is most of our economy. Do you just completely lose that convenience and you're just only going to eat at home now because you're only allowed to do so much? Or do we continue doing this? I mean, from most of the businesses that I've talked to that run with just the takeout, and some of them are larger businesses, some of them are smaller, they're lucky if they're running at 20% capacity doing the takeout. It's not enough to keep their employees on, it's not enough to pay for the rent, it's not enough to really do much of anything. And I know 3 of them after that first month closed indefinitely because they lost too much money. And that was like our argument, like, do we keep the kitchen open? Do we try this? Or, because you're going to waste $1,000 just getting the new packaging for products to get them out the door and make them, deliverable or for pickup. And then, for the fresh food that may or may not sell because people are not sure what to do right now. And you're still running into that 3 months later where people, do I go out to eat? Do I go pick something up? Do I wait until you guys open? Do I just not order at all? Like, so it is. It's, and people don't see that, how that affects the economy and how that's going to affect your health later on. That's like a big argument that I've gotten into with several people where if you don't have money to buy food and the government is now lost all of this money because they've been handing out, pandemic unemployment, everything's sky high, how are you going to feed yourself and keep yourself healthy? They miss that completely. The economy doesn't matter. It does. It absolutely does, because you need to feed yourself. And if you're not eating a healthy diet to keep your immune system in check, guess what happens? We're right back to square one, and it might be as simple as catching the flu at that point. It won't be a massive virus. It'll be a very simple virus that we've dealt with for 200, 300, 400 years that now our body can't deal with because we're malnourished.
Isolation too.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, you build up small exposure to anything over time.
Right.
But even going back to your runny nose thing, or like just a little bit while you're at work, it's also allergy season.
Right.
and
It's like
it's not helping, that's for sure.
It's like the Salem witch trials out there. If you're sneezing, or
Oh yeah,
Dude, every
absolutely.
time I have to cough in public, I try not to, and sometimes I'm just like, my throat's like on fire. I have to just cough. And you're just coughing. It's like how, and it's weird because like you have to think about that now because you look around, and it's like, who's gonna say something because somebody's going to.
who's gonna knock me out right now?
Right.
If I cough. Before the masks were like recommended, I was at the pharmacy standing in line for like my generic prescription pickup. And I had to sneeze all of a sudden.
no.
And I'm like, oh, this is not going to be good.
Everybody's gonna be giving you the death stare.
No, you just immediately see just people move.
Yep.
Like either I'll come back and get my thing later, or they just hang back further.
I'm just gonna go hide in this corner for a minute. Don't mind me.
You sneeze and then you touch everything.
Yeah. Well, like, I
No,
think
that's when
back-
you get charged with terrorism, right? Right now.
But remember how long? It wasn't that long ago when they were licking the ice cream containers, and that was
Yeah.
a huge thing. That wasn't more than a year ago.
It might have been this year.
Right. So I mean, we went from that to this in a matter of less than a year. And like that wasn't an act of terrorism then, people licking ice cream containers.
There were charges pressed of
There
some
were,
sort, but
yes.
yeah, they weren't considering it
Yeah,
terrorism.
it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, it was just like, I don't know what they charged them with, but I know the one lady around here, for whatever reason, just got pissed off at a grocery store and went around coughing on all of the produce, and like the cops, that was what it was. They charged her with terrorism and disturbing the peace. There was a whole bunch.
Oh
of
yeah,
shit.
you got to throw a whole bunch of charges so
Right.
that one of them
Hope
sticks.
Hope one of them sticks.
That's the name of the game.
Something will work.
Yeah. Well, you can't dismiss all of them.
Right.
You would hope, anyways.
Like I've never been charged with anything before, and it's like, well, you got 30 counts here.
Yeah.
We're just ticking time bomb. It's fine.
Yeah, we just gotta slap you up real good.
Oh man.
But now, like, no matter which way you look at it, if you're not allowed to open,
Right.
like, the yellow zone is the one that really bothers me the most. I'll take the red zone where it's like, okay, only essential businesses. But yellow is, they're like, well, these are the really non-essential businesses, and these guys still can't open.
Right.
The hairdressers, tattoo parlors, rec centers, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
And you're like, well, now you're just playing favorites. And
Right.
that's not cool. And if people aren't comfortable going to get their hair cut,
Then don't go.
then they
Correct.
won't go. But again, my point being, like, they should be able to go out of business on the merit of people not going to get their services,
Right.
not because they couldn't exist.
Right.
Sure.
And like, if people decided that they weren't comfortable going to the skate park,
Then they wouldn't show up.
then you'd be like, man, that is a real bummer, but at least we tried.
Right. And that's, that's where we're at. Even last year, granted last year was a total different deal, having to close early, but this year it's like, we even talked about it. We're like, in April, it's like, well, what do we do? Do we even, because that's when when Wolf extended it indefinitely, and we're just like, well, do we even bother trying to open? Or we kept in communication with our lawyers and insurance and everything, and they're just like, whatever you guys got to do. So the upside is everyone, even like any bills or like loans or anything that we have personally, like they're just like, we understand what's going on here, so we'll help, but eventually it's going to be like, all right, we've helped enough, or we can't help any longer. We need to, they need to get the money back in too. It's not just us.
Yeah, no, everything, it just came to a grinding halt,
Right.
except some businesses, which then means like these guys couldn't shut down. Like the banks can't stop taking money
Right.
from
Right.
people that owe them anything.
Sure.
It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
landlords. How can you just not collect rent
Right.
when like that's your primary source of income? You're a landlord. So that doesn't make a lot of sense either when
And
that
there
got
were
deferred.
so many people that would sit there and be like, "Oh, I don't have to pay my rent this month." No, you absolutely do.
You
just
just
because
might have to pay it 6 months later. You still have to pay it.
Right, and like, but people aren't like putting the two and two together. Like the bills are all still there. So as much as your landlord may have gotten a break from the state, so like let's look at a basic mortgage. Like our mortgage will furlough or what's the other
Forbearance.
or forbearance.
Was the big
That
thing.
doesn't mean that our mortgage is pushed into 6 months after the end of our loan. It is only pushed for the amount of time that they gave us. So in 6 months, we owe whatever we owed within all that time that we didn't pay. So it doesn't make any bit of difference. It's still all, so if you owe $200 and $200 and $200, you owe $600 at the end of those 3 months. And people don't see that. They're like, no, I just don't have to pay it. It's like, no, you do. And there are certain banks that are absolutely reworking their loan structures and willing to work with people and pushing the loan to the end, but it's not all banks. So most of your landlords are dealing with, okay, I got a hold for 3 months while all this is going on, but now I owe all 3 months at the 4th month.
Well, and landlords are not allowed to evict someone right now.
Correct.
But if you go 3-4 months and you don't pay your rent,
Right.
and they're not allowed to evict you, and they come back to you at the end of that and go, okay, like you got to pay up now.
Right.
And you're like, no. It's like, all right, well, I don't have to keep you as a tenant anymore.
Right.
Correct. Right.
Like
There is
you've
going to
been
be
protected.
that line. Right.
Well, there's probably going to be a mass, like, homeless
Oh, absolutely.
sure.
there
thing
is.
Yeah,
going
there's
on, at least,
definitely gonna
at
be-
least for a short term.
Be that going on.
Yeah.
And that's going to be its own problem. And, like, especially if this continues.
Right.
There's another side to this whole thing. Obviously, we're talking the business side and like, yeah, let us open. They're not allowing enough time to see what each of these phases is going to do.
Right. They have no idea. It's a guessing game.
They're moving from red to yellow to green.
In
And
like a
they'll
2-week.
they'll move you from yellow
Right.
to yellow, and then 2 weeks later to green, and you're like, this takes 2 weeks to manifest itself.
Correct.
So, if you take the 2 weeks that you were in the yellow period and you move everyone to green, the next 2 weeks is where you're going to see if yellow worked.
Right.
Right.
So you might already be in green, realizing that yellow was a horrible idea.
Right.
And now you're going to have this mass explosion of cases again,
And send you right back to red.
or nothing.
It's like a
Or it'll
bad,
be perfectly
bad
fine.
case of Monopoly.
Right. Sure. I mean, you don't. I mean, and that's part of it. Like, we don't know what's. Like, no one knows anything about this. It's brand new, and even like. But the thing that I look at too is I remember somebody saying that Wolf said, "I'm not going to completely open anything until there's a vaccine." Well, if you look at the first SARS, there's not a vaccine for that. If you look at MERS, which is the exact same thing, but it started in the Middle East, that doesn't have a vaccine either. And they just kind of went away. Like all this stuff that was going to kill us in the 2000s, whether it was Y2K, swine flu, H1N1, what was there was anthrax, the first SARS. It's like,
yeah, anthrax.
yeah, like none of us, we all kind of made it out.
Well, what do we need a vaccine for a disease that has like a 99 point something survival rate?
Exactly.
Right. And that's what they're going to look at, which is why they didn't end up making a vaccine for the other ones, because it wasn't necessary. But I mean, at the same time, I mean, people buy into the flu vaccines where, they consistently get it every year, and a lot of people don't know. They're playing a guessing game with what strain is coming out for that year. So it is very well that you will get the flu anyways, not because you didn't get the vaccine, but simply because they picked the wrong strain for that year. They just went, okay, I think this is the one we're going to go with because that seems like the biggest probability of it to happen. And then, oh, nope, it hit something else, and that's the one that you're going to get. And I mean, it does kill a good amount of people, but at the same time, like, it's your elderly, it's your young, it's, people with compromised immune systems, and that goes for any virus, any bacteria, anything. If you don't have a good immune system, It's unfortunate, yes, but like, and that's the thing that bothers me the most. Like, I feel like we've like totally lost touch with reality on that people do die. It is a thing. We don't live forever, you know, and things happen to us all the time, whether it's driving a car and crashing or, you know, getting into a gunfight. I mean, is the probability high? No, but these things happen. We die, you know, and it's just something that like, people seem to just be often left field with. No, we're going to live forever.
We'd have to look this up to substantiate this guess, but there's probably more likelihood of dying in a car crash than there is
Probably.
of coronavirus.
Probably. We'll find the probability rates at some point.
But at the same
I'm not
time,
going to look that up. I don't care.
Have one of your listeners do it. That's what they're good for.
Yeah, exactly. Then they'll
See,
they'll
that's
tell
what
you
we
on
need the
Instagram.
live for. Is like, hey guys, look this up.
Yeah.
for me real
Somebody
quick.
look this up so we can keep bullshitting. 20 minutes later, we'll come back to it. But like at the same time, you know, where do you draw the line? It's, you know, no one wanted anybody to die from corona. Okay, so what about cancer? That kills how many thousands of people a year? Smoking kills how many thousands of people? Like, and that was always my big thing. Like, why has this been this big thing where we have to shut everything down?
Yeah, this one's been a weird one. Like, I don't even want to say the word because it drives me nuts to hear it at this point, but it's unprecedented.
Yeah.
But it's
These
the
trying times.
Yeah,
unprecedented
yeah.
all the
times.
cliches you could think of, but it's just that one, like, it's how to describe it, because no one's ever been through this before, and it's just, and it's one of those things we're kind of learning as we go, but at the same time, I don't think we're learning as much as we go as we think we are. We're just kind of, it's like we said before with like criminal charges, we're just kind of throwing shit at the wall and hoping something sticks. Like, okay, the shutdown, well, did that work? It's still around. There's less cases and whatnot. Okay, we'll open back up again. So, you know, and again, like, no one has said, okay, if the cases start to go back up, this is what we're going to do. It's just, we're kind of taking it day by day, and that's fine, but all you're going to do is piss a lot of people off when it's like, hey, the cases are going back up. This county, this state is going back to yellow or red or whatever. And it's going to be like, well, what the fuck? We were just out. And now we have to go back. This is bullshit.
If they push anyone back to red, it's going to be bad.
Sure.
You would hope that people would say something, but I have a strong fear, and like for the businesses that I do, like the small businesses that I know that have been open this whole time, that have been fighting for the other businesses, nobody said a peep. And that's the problem, is that you have a couple, like we have our local gym that opened up a couple weeks early, that they've been getting cited every day because they're open. But it's not enough of us that are coming forward and being like, okay, we have the financial responsibility to be like, we're going to fight this thing, because because we're small businesses and we don't have the finances to back that up, in hopes that a year and a half from now, 2 years from now, when it does go to court, we're going to be able to get our money back from it. Like, I mean, I know that the Wolf administration is being sued right now because they,
like left and right,
they picked and chose who was going to get a waiver and who wasn't. Like, I got the waiver of, now we're watching you, you're on a watch list because you submitted for this waiver and you were not a, what's the word I'm looking for?
One of the chosen ones?
Yeah, one of the chosen ones.
Yeah,
you're not an essential business.
You try to do things right, and you know, you get the shaft, and instead of just rebel running it and just, oh, you know what, we're just going to stay open under the radar and see what happens. And I mean, yeah, that's what a lot of places did, and then a lot of places did what we did, where we're going to try to do this legally so it's okay, and then it's no, and we're going to watch you to make sure you don't open. And it's like, who does that help?
Yeah, well, and then there's, I mean, even aside from like this business, the machine shop, when you looked at the list of essential businesses,
it was pick and choose.
Machine shops were not allowed. They were explicitly not allowed to exist.
Some of them were, but it depended on what you made, because I think aerospace and automotive were okay. Ours,
medical.
Right. So I know some of our customers and shops we work with went the medical route, which is great. But one, like where I work, we're a repair shop, and we do repair for toilet paper companies and, you know, places that do medical stuff. So it's like, why can they be open but we can't, just because, you know, we don't run production on anything? So it's the same thing. It's, you're picking and choosing what's essential and what's not. And my boss always, you know, my boss would tell anybody, look at anything on this planet, and tell me that it's not associated with a machine shop. Like something that's a product that you buy, any part of it was a machine shop had their hand in it. So if anything is not, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but like
casting maybe or molds.
Right.
But even then, the tools they're using, where'd they come from?
Right. They don't just plop from the sky, and it's like, so as far as essential businesses go, I mean, like I said, not to pat myself on the back or like carry a flag or anything, but I mean, I'd say we're pretty essential, whether it's, whether we're making, I don't know, whether we're making parts that go on a ventilator or whether we're making things to print a paperback book. Like I could, you could see the difference, but it's still making something.
Well, I looked at it from the stance of like, it's almost an antiquated list. It goes back 50 years where maybe the company that's making the ventilators had their own machine shop.
Right.
And they did everything in-house. And it's like,
now the only thing they do is assemble it in-house.
right. And it's like, okay, well, if this company is essential, then the 50 vendors on their approved supplier list are also essential.
Right.
And that's what we saw a lot of. We saw, like, we do power generation, nuclear power, and some oil and gas and some other stuff. But, like, they would come back to us with a letter and be like, we are a power generation station. You are a supplier to us. Therefore, you are essential. And it kind of bypassed even applying for the waiver system, because it's like,
If you say so.
Right,
no.
exactly,
What
right.
if the cops come by, they're gonna be like, "Do you have a waiver?" And you're like, "No, but I have letters from the Navy and I have letters from
Right.
all these different power plants across the United States telling us that we need to keep our operations open." And I had some suppliers that they were shut down because they fell into the casting or just generic machine shop setup, and it's like,
So let's hope
So I would-
nothing breaks in the next 3 months.
well, then I have to pass a letter down to them, and then being that they're functioning just as a machine shop, they would apply for a waiver,
Right.
and like they all got them.
Well, that's good.
I don't know any machine shops that really actually shut down for the duration of it.
Yeah, we didn't shut down. I mean, I think we were shut down for like 3 or 4 days. And then, like I said, all of our customers were still open, whether they were essential or just said, fuck it, I'm going to stay open.
Yeah.
And like, if they were screaming for parts, my boss would call me in to do them.
Yeah.
So I'd go in for a couple days and then I'd be off a couple days. Go in for a couple days, be off a couple days. And it's like, and then that just played hell on the unemployment and everything, which was a whole other shit show in and amongst itself. But-
Yeah.
So
No, when it comes to the unemployment, you're better off not working at all than getting plug and play
Sure.
hours here and there.
Well, it depends on the situation, because he was losing money being on unemployment. Even if he got the full amount, he was losing money.
Yeah.
The only thing that is saving this business right now is because I was able to collect the pandemic unemployment. And I mean, it is the bare minimum, but like it's enough to get some of those bills paid every week.
Yeah,
Just
just
be
giving
like,
them
okay,
something.
at least I'm not out trying to find a job right now going, okay, where can I, because we didn't get help from anybody else. Like the state wasn't giving us help. The EIDL wasn't giving us help. We couldn't get PPP, and that's because we're a small business and we fall into that category where they said, okay, we're giving loans, but we didn't change how the loans are structured. We didn't change the requirements for the loans. We still require all of the same things that you needed a loan, or what you needed to get a loan in the first place. And that does no small business any good, because most of us have started these businesses out of our own pockets. So it's like, how does that help anybody? How does that make anything any better? And like we were talking about before we started all of this, how does that help most small businesses if you get another loan on top of what you already had out? Now you just have another bill added to the pile. And most people don't see that. They just thought, oh, it's free money. It's not. We have to pay it back.
Depending on how your business was structured, like a medium-sized company, it probably does help them.
It depends.
Where they can take that money, they can attribute it all to payroll.
Right.
But it becomes a game of left pocket, right pocket.
Right.
Okay, this amount of money came out of my right pocket, and this amount of money came out of my left pocket. It's still your money.
Correct. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul.
So you're like dancing around the fact that, well, you're only allowed to use this money for payroll and rent or whatever and insurances and stuff. And you're like, okay, but the other money that I've got, because a lot of companies that got it were still able to operate, which also seemed kind of weird.
Right.
That you're getting this paycheck protection, but you're also still operating.
That I do from a business standpoint, I do understand that, because when they're operating, like our local t-shirt company that's been helping us out, they were running a skeleton crew. They could barely afford that because they were limited to what they could do. So in that sense, the PayPal, or the not the PayPal,
PPP.
the PPP, they were helping, instead of people going on to unemployment, they were lessening that fact and being able to keep those employees on. Does it help in the long run? We have yet to see, because if businesses aren't able to open back up to full capacity, again, it may just be another bill added to the pile. It may not have helped them at all, no matter what size the company was. So it really is going to be dependent on what happens in these next couple months to see what happens with the economy, what happens with unemployment, what happens with people being able to work. And that's like a whole other mess all in itself.
And bookkeeping side too. I mean, how many of these people,
I don't even want to think about it.
how many of these people that got that loan are tracking it well enough that when, because they didn't give you requirements for how you need to track
They
your
did.
expenditures. Okay.
Yeah, they do have, there is a list. So when you do actually get the loan,
I've
there
seen
is a
that
list. Yeah.
I've seen the list of what you're allowed to spend it on.
Right.
But I guess where I was going was how that needs to be recorded in your books.
The same way that you would record anything else.
I
There's
would think if they give you, say, 20 grand as a nice number, that if you take 1,500 out of that to pay payroll 1 week, that you need to show 1,500 withdrawn out of that account and $1,500 going to payroll.
Yeah.
And you match them up. Not like, well, I took all this money and then I pay these other things and like, here's the payroll cost, and be like, yeah, we're not actually waiving your loan.
I mean, they could, I guess they could technically do that, but like I'm thinking from our standpoint, we use QuickBooks. It's quick and easy. We have an accountant. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily mean that like, okay, you got that 20,000 and you have to, take that 20,000 and show that it directly went to payroll. As long as you show over the course of that, 6 week or 8 week or 24 week, whatever period they gave you, that you spent 75% of 20,000 and it did go to payroll, they're going to say, okay, that's fine. So it doesn't, necessarily mean that you specifically had to say, okay, 20,000 directly went to payroll and that's all we used it for. If it makes your bookkeeping easier and it makes your life easier to do it that way, absolutely go for it. But at the same time, as long as you have a tracked method of, the amount of time that you had to spend that money and how much of that money needed to go somewhere, and it did, I don't foresee that being an issue. But again, we've been dealing with things changing consistently over the past 3 months. So who knows how trustful anything is at this
I
point.
think the one that was sketchy to me when I was reading it, and just from what I saw, is that you were only allowed to pay newly accrued interest on existing loans using that money.
Right.
So if you took that money out of the bank account and dumped it on your line of credit to then start using it, you just paid principal balance with that.
Correct.
It doesn't matter that you're showing that you paid blah,
Correct.
blah, blah with it.
That is
That's going to be a
fail-safe.
problem for a lot of people, I think.
And that fail-safe is because a lot of people are behind on their bills. They don't want you using that loan to pay back things that you were already behind on, because that meant that your business may have technically already been failing.
Yep.
And if you were, at that point, I would look at it, how'd they get a loan in the first place? There's no way. Because if you're already behind on loans and the loan process hasn't changed, you should have not been able to get that loan to begin with. Because I know from like the couple people that I do know that got the EIDL loans, the state loans, they were looking at a 1-to-1 ratio, which means that you made just as much as you put out. Means that you weren't behind on anything. And that's what they were looking for as part of the loan process.
Yep.
So if there were a few people that went under the radar and got a loan of any sort for help, I could see how that would be the fail-safe to make sure that they didn't pay back on things they were already behind on if they managed to slip under the radar.
Yeah, and it would be no matter which way you looked at it, it'd be the easier way of just managing your bills. If all my
Sure.
bills get paid out of that line of credit account, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So you dump it all in there. Now it's like, well, that's where you should have been like, okay, I paid this amount out of my line of credit. I withdrew this amount
Right.
from the account to put it in there. And I
Right.
think there's probably going to be some people that don't get their waivers on that.
Possibly. I mean, my bigger issue when all of this came about, especially with the PPP, was that you have small businesses that are run by one person, which they don't necessarily always fall under an employee. Like, we're not employees of our business, but technically speaking, if we were able to get the PPP, we could pay ourselves through that as employees. They will look at it that way. But at the time, you were able to collect pandemic unemployment and get a loan from PPP. So you could essentially pay yourself probably $20,000 right off the bat when you never made that in your entire time of owning a business. That infuriated me, and it still does because they haven't made any changes to that. So I am concerned of how many people are sliding under the radar and doing that and getting away with it. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, is the IRS going to track them down? Are they really going to look at records and keep track of everything? Like, we have no idea.
I would hope, but do they have the time to audit
Right.
Everyone.
a million plus businesses
Right.
that have applied for this?
Right.
Who knows? They're not going to. And I believe that the banks are in charge of approving the waivers on it too.
Yep.
So
Yeah, whatever
the,
bank
the
is
lending,
like your local one, or like whatever bank is deemed for your area, they're in charge of that.
yeah, and
Not
they're just
necessarily,
gonna
but
To a point.
yeah.
they're just gonna look at it and go, well, I'm not responsible if this doesn't match, so approved. I mean, it'll all come out down the road in taxes and like other bookkeeping.
You
Right.
would hope.
And like you said, you're paying an accountant.
Right.
The company I work for pays an accountant. Like, if something shady is going on, they're
Yeah,
gonna
my
be
accountant's
like,
going to yell at me.
you might not want to do this.
Yeah, I'm gonna get yelled at a lot. So
Yeah, but those. I mean, you're not utilizing probably their service that much right now, but those bills don't go away either. You're
Right.
still paying that guy to be on call if you need
correct.
it,
Yep.
or her.
Yeah, her. It's a her.
Okay.
But yeah, no, absolutely. And that's just and like, we've talked, which I completely forgot about when I initially listed like how we were going to operate the business when we get to open. We have to drop all new waivers because of what we are, and the dome itself actually has to as well, because we are a sporting facility, to the extent we have to have all new waivers, and we have to figure out how that's going to be drawn up, because it can't realistically just be listed for COVID. It has to be for anything that comes and happens in the future. So we have to
Yeah.
figure out how all of that's going to tie in with the waivers that we already have, how we're going to keep track of people coming in and out of the building, to have tracing of some sort, to know like, okay, I was here on Tuesday, like this person was here on Tuesday, be aware that this happened.
Yeah,
and that
sign in, sign out, probably.
Right.
And you already did that anyway,
Correct.
right?
We did, the dome didn't. So the dome has to now take some of our paperwork and learn how to utilize that so they can keep track of,
Oh, that'll be entertaining.
400 kids a week. Oh yeah, that's going to be fantastic.
great.
Well, you posted that earlier this afternoon, actually.
I
So-
did, but I forgot when I initially made the first post, which was a couple weeks
Okay.
ago, when I was asking everybody, like, this is, what kind of financial help we're going to need to get everything started back up. I completely forgot about the lawyer fees. That's a whole other bill all in itself.
Yeah.
And they're not cheap. They try to help us as much as possible, but they're still not cheap, because it's a hard thing to sit there and draw up, a whole new waiver that includes something that's just so out in left field right now, because we don't know what to
and
do.
constantly evolving.
Right.
So, like, let's say, just out of curiosity, if this week we all signed waivers, we all ride and everything, next week, well, hey, we kind of changed the guidance, this changed, that changed.
Right.
Obviously, the waiver is it's active in the time between when I signed it until that new guidance was issued.
Right.
But then I got to keep coming back and signing a new waiver
Correct.
every single
Right.
week,
Right.
and you got to keep paying a lawyer to keep updating your waiver
Right.
every
Sure,
week.
I mean,
It's
we-
like ridiculous.
And I mean, we have customers now that complain that they have to fill a new one out every year. It's like, well, that's how our insurance company wants it. It's not that we want to have you fill one out every year. Believe me, it's a pain in the ass for us too, because we got to take a picture, we got to scan your license and do all this other shit. And it's like, yeah, believe me, it's not by choice. If we didn't have to, it would be like any other skate park, whether they have insurance or not, to just, one and done. I think ECT, just from getting hurt, I had like 6 or 7 waivers filled out, because every time I would get hurt, they'd come running out here. Do you have a waiver? I have one. We'll fill another one out. Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
But
that's when you sign it with forced to sign after injury.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But that's when skate parks were most fun.
But I mean, I look at it too, we have complaints, like, we have great insurance, but, we were always like, oh man, like, why is our insurance requiring us to do this every year? And now with this situation going on, I'm like, you know what? It's not necessarily a bad thing. I'm like, because so much changes all the time, and people do forget. They walk in here, they think they know half the rules, they kind of read through the list real quick, they forget, so it gives them a refresher for that year. Like, okay, all right, I remember all the rules now. You had to go over them with me. I had to sign the stupid waiver again. I get it. And then you also look at the fact that, like, a lot of our kids, they're literally kids coming in here. And I think that first year to second year, most of them were 17, so their parents had to come in, which was a big complaint. Oh, my parents have to sign the waiver with me. And then they turned 18 the next year, so they had to do their own waiver. And they're like, this is awful. I'm like, yeah. Think of what your parents had to go through having to do this. Like, come on.
And even having to say to them, what does this say? What does this say? Because none of them can write for a goddamn thing. It's, what's this say? What's this number? Well, why do you need that? Because I put your phone number in the system. Just tell me what it is. Or, and we have please write legibly on the waiver, but I don't think they even know what legibly means at this point. But it's like, Jesus, come on, help me out. Help me help you a little bit.
And that's the other thing too that we were talking about, how, if we're required to, with all of these new requirements coming in, depending on how that plays out in the next couple weeks, like if we are required to take temperatures and, clock in, clock out, write down their temperature, like all these extra things that we have to add in on top of signing a waiver, like we're trying to figure out a way, which we have been for, since we started, of how to do it online where it's still legal, we can still run through the whole process. And pretty much what we've come up with at this point is, like, they're going to fill it out online and be able to sign it at home. We are going to trust that their parent has signed it, because what we're going to do to back that up is call and go, hey, are you aware that your kid's coming down here to ride? Did you sign the waiver with them? Send us a picture of your ID. And as much as it's, a headache for us to do that, I think that kind of calms down the situation of walking in the door and having to go through that whole process. Because now you're coming through the door, possibly having to go through the process of having your temperature checked and going through all that.
Yeah.
So it's like, can we make it a little less of a headache? Yes, as long as our insurance company's okay with it, as long as our lawyer's okay with it. And I think that's like the best way to kind of deal with the situation without making it more chaotic than it already is.
Yeah, I remember going to certain skate parks and it'd be like, I don't have a waiver on file.
Sure.
And I didn't know I was going to need one, just being a dumb kid, because like every single park you go to needs a waiver on file.
Yeah,
like, what are you thinking? But be like, he'd hand you the waiver anyway and be like, go out to the car and have your mom sign it.
But my mom's not in the car.
My mom's not here. She dropped me off. And he's like, I don't think you're understanding what I'm telling you. Go out to the car and have your mom sign it. And you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll be right back. She'll sign it for me. So that park, I was like, when I turned 18, I'm like, hey, can I put a legit waiver on file now? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like,
don't worry about it.
I'm like, well, I know it was a handful of years ago and you totally forgot, but this whole situation, he was like, yeah, we should probably get a real one. Like, yeah,
we
should.
try to avoid that, because it's only been, I'd say, like, what, 1 or 2 kids where, like, mom or dad had no idea that they were down here. And I mean, they weren't necessarily upset once they found out. I think they were more upset at the kid for kind of lying to where they were going. But, like, if you know that your kid's going to a safe place, that they're going to be, like, watched by somebody, they're not just, like, out and about doing whatever, they're a little more calm about the whole situation. But you deal with it, where, parents have no idea where their kids are at. I mean, I know I was that kid. I don't know about you, but my mom was like, just be back, by 11 p.m. We're good. And I'm like, okay, no idea where I was,
Yeah, I just told my mom where I was. Mom, I'm just going to this friend's house. Okay, go ahead. And then where we went after that.
Right.
Yeah, I went to the friend's house,
But we
Right,
went there.
exactly.
I mean,
and then we went a whole bunch of other
Right.
places.
Yep.
But long story short,
but I did go to his house. Believe me, I promise.
We were there for like 5 minutes and then we left.
we were there just long enough for his mom to acknowledge that we were there
Right.
as well.
Yep.
Alibi. God.
But no, I mean, even like you're talking safe space compared to a lot of skate parks, like this place is pretty nice.
Well, that's good to
As
hear.
far as being clean and like easy to access, on the Skate 1-4 one, I was like, it's the perfect example of the older style skate park.
Oh,
where
God,
like,
yeah.
you pull up and you see a sign on the top corner of the building that says the skate park's name.
Right.
But there's like no visual doors or anything, and you're like,
How do I get in here?
I've been to enough skate parks. It's a sketchy door on the side of the
It's
building.
a sketchy door.
The
and then as soon
sign's
as you-
on this side, so it's probably this side.
As soon as you see the door, it's just got stickers all
Yep.
over it. Like, that's definitely the door.
Exactly.
The worst place, and it sucks that they took the jumps out of it, was the Mega Cavern down in Louisville. Her and I went there on vacation the one year.
Yeah, that was rough.
And like it's the weirdest place because it's its own giant underground, like, literal cavernous facility. So like you go in, you pull up to the parking lot, and there's a giant door to go, like giant garage door to go in for, I think, like 2 tractor trailers can go in and 2 can come out. It's like 4 tractor trailers wide. The thing's enormous, but there's no door saying, here, come in here or whatever. There's like a little pavilion outside so you could hang out. But like, I'm getting my bike out of the car and we're just kind of looking around. I'm like, I have no idea where to go. And these 2 dudes with mountain bikes came in. They're like, you never been here before? And I'm like, no, I've no idea. He's like, just follow us. So you go in, you go down this sketchy hallway, and then it's just, there's all these just blank doors, full metal doors that are just like, it's just the weirdest place. And then you just get to one that says Mega Cavern, you open it, and it just opens up into this huge room, and it's like, this is the weirdest place I've ever been to.
Ramp Riders in St. Louis was the only park that I was like unsure of where to go to get into. And I just hung out in my car until I watched kids with skateboards
There
pick a
you
door.
go,
And I'm
yeah.
like, all right, that's the door.
That's where we go.
But then it was one of those situations where you go in and there's like not a park there. There's just stairs. And you're like, do I really have to go upstairs?
With a bike.
No, they're on the second floor of a huge building.
Well, Skate 1-4
But
is
Skate
in the
1-4 is in the
basement, right?
basement, and that's enough. But at least there's like a hallway and
Right.
the stairs down. So Skate 1-4, you like walk in the door and you're like, is it up or is it down? And you think for a second, you're like, it's totally down. But no, like all those places, as soon as you like, you kind of guess your way through it, and you're like, "This is the
Yeah,
right
we'll
place."
figure it out eventually.
I feel that this is the right
Right.
place.
Well, even Hackettstown was kind of weird because Hackettstown was a lot like this. I don't know if you ever went there.
I never made it to Hackettstown.
Hackettstown, because it was like, once you pull in the parking lot, you just see this giant barn, and like you go in, and there's a reception desk, and I think behind, like if you went straight, there was a roller skating rink, but then like the reception desk was kind of like for everything. So you go in, it's like, well, what are you here for? It's like, the skate park? Oh, okay. So they, give you the wristband, and you turn around and go in the door that was like, it was to your left when you came in, and the skate park's in there. But like, there's the roller rink, and then they had the concession stand, and like, it was a whole other thing going on other than the skate park in the same building. So it was kind of like the Dome is, but it was just so weird, and it had like this like weird fireplace, not like nothing like Ray's. It was almost looked like a brick one from a house that was just in the lobby, and it was just such a weird place. But then you just, you pick the right door and you go into the skate park. Skate parks are weird, man.
It's amazing that our parents would ever take us and drop
I
us
know.
off in these like weird industrial buildings, because it wasn't normal. Like they didn't come up with that before.
No, it was just,
like
what is this?
if I were to take my kid to some sketchy industrial building and be like, Yeah, you're in the right place,
Right.
dude.
Right.
I know this feeling.
Sure,
Like,
but think even when my mom used to take us up to ECT, she would take me and a friend, and my aunt lived in Waverly, so she would drive the hour, we would drive the hour. They'd hook up in Binghamton, and just like they'd go to the mall in Johnson City, we would ride for 2, 3, 4 hours or whatever. But like my first time going there with my mom, she's like, I'm letting you into this place? I'm like, yeah, it's cool. Don't worry about it. I'll be fine.
yeah, you're not even thinking about it.
Yeah, she's like, Ma, don't worry.
No, I mean, who in their right mind drives their kid to Binghamton and leaves them in Johnson City in a weird
Especially
warehouse?
where it was. It's not even off. It's off the main street, and like you turn down the one road and you're like, oh, this is the street that it's on. But then it's on this other one, and I think the parking lot was like 3 car lengths of a street, and that was the actual like physical address for the building.
Yeah, and the original entrance was like, there was the main building, and then it went up the loading dock
Yeah.
ramp, and you went in that way.
Yeah, it was. Oh God.
Well, that sounds like the one building that we were looking at that's next door to your business.
Oh yeah, basically.
Yeah.
For the most part.
I mean, I get it. Like you're trying to utilize a building that was completely meant for something else, and you just got to kind of figure it out and go, okay, like what's the best way to make this work?
But at the same time, like you can't have a skate park in a normal building.
Right, because you need the square footage.
Right, like
you
I
know?
mean,
And
yeah, you could.
ceilings.
Right.
Yeah, like you could put it in the mall, but at the same time, like you're not going to want a bunch of quote unquote hoodlums riding through the mall on bikes and skateboards, and then you just have. I mean, Woodward tried to do it down in Philly, and that only lasted a couple of years.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're not going to want that in a mall or anything. I mean, plus you're not going to be able to afford the rent. But that's a whole other
Yeah.
piece of the pie. But yeah, I mean, you have to have like a sketchy building that's got 20-foot ceilings and 10,000 or more square feet. Unless you do what Ray's did and just kind of work around what you have.
Right.
Which, speaking of sketchy buildings,
Ray's is a peculiar case, though, because their floor doesn't actually have to be good.
right? It's meant for mountain bikes, so it can have a shitty floor.
Like,
There's
That,
that's part of it.
That trifecta of large square footage, tall ceilings, and good floor makes it like a needle in a haystack to
Right.
find a good building to do a skate
Right.
park in.
Yeah, and I think
I guess
Rye
the
was
fourth
only
one
that
is
did it.
reasonable rent.
Rye was the only one that did it, but as far as I know, they built that entire building, and that's like 50,000 square feet.
Yeah.
But they they could afford it up that way.
Yeah. Yes, because New Hampshire is so cheap.
That's what I'm saying. They were probably like, we got it. But yeah, I mean, it's just one of those deals where to find a building it's the ultimate, like you said, needle in a haystack, because if you're trying to find a building, you have to have that trifecta of the floor space, and the ceiling height. Then you also have to have a landlord that's willing to rent to 99 times out of 100 a bunch of weird looking people that have just been riding bikes and skateboards their entire life that want to do this as a business. And then
Probably
you tell
without
them,
a business plan a lot of the time.
exactly. And then
absolutely.
you tell them, oh well, I want to do a skate park, and it's like, oh, I don't want to do it for the liability. It's like, okay, so what? And I always looked at it whenever I got told that. It's like, well, what's the difference whether it's a skate park and some kid falls and cracks their head, or you have a Walmart in there and some idiot didn't put a shelf together the right way, and someone smashes a Jazzy into it, collapses the shelf, and now you have how many lawsuits because of shitty workmanship or whatever a lawyer will throw at it. So what's the difference between liability? And it's so
None when
once
you have insurance.
Right.
So once you find you have to find that.
Or if you're not dealing with a landlord, like the other half of it that we were looking at when we initially started looking at buildings and where we could go, if you're looking to buy a building, you have to look at the zoning. So a lot of these buildings, you can't bring that zoning back down from commercial, because where you sit with a skate park in Pennsylvania, at least, is B2, which is amusement, entertainment, kind of like miscellaneous. But once you've gone to commercial, it costs thousands of dollars to try to get a piece of property rezoned to go back down. It's a hell of a lot easier to take a residential piece of property and just bump it up one, because then the city's like, yes or no. doesn't cost a lot of money. You're probably looking at like $100 to, file the paperwork, whatever. But if you've gone from commercial, which most of these buildings are, and try to drop it back down, you're looking at lawyers' fees, you're looking at legal fees, you're looking at dealing with the city for years, if not, a decade, because they're just kind of like, no, we could probably do something else with this, or we could find somebody else to buy the building and utilize it for what it was, initially purposed for. So there's, that whole mess to deal with, or you deal with the landlord. And it's like, where do you, which beast do you want to fight more? That's, yeah, I don't envy that at all.
And speaking of good floors, you guys have turf.
Yeah, our floor is
Yes.
great.
Yes, we do. Which is
We were just talking about that before you got here, because I mean, that floor out there is what, 20 years old now?
Yep.
22? Or no, 20, because they brought it in a year later.
no.
We're all sorts of
Well,
tangled
if
down
you
there.
figure 99 when they brought it. Well, no, I think they had the park in 98. So if it's 98, 99, it's easily at least 20 years old. And I mean, that's the one thing that we get more complaints about than anything. But it's like, okay, we don't have to put the floor down, just ride on the turf. You ain't gonna go very fast. And I mean, it's basically its own animal. I mean, we have to manage it. Like it'll heat up. Like right now, it's probably in the 90s out there, and it's everything expanded. If it doesn't have a ramp on it, it's just gonna bubble up and do what it wants. And it's, would I love to put another floor down? Sure. Do I want to pay for it? Absolutely not. But I mean, hey, it's what we have right now for what we're trying to work toward, and it's just it hasn't been the easiest getting to that point.
Well,
Or
yeah,
getting to the next step.
I think that whole story is its own thing. Like, because you guys have been Keystone RampWorks for 3 years. This is the third year, we said.
Right.
You're saying it started in 98, 99, where they had a pop-up park in here
Right.
every summer, which is just a tough time to open an indoor park,
Sure,
no
it's
matter where you
backwards,
are.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But
it made sense for what they have to deal with, because their business thrives on sports. You've got thousands of people coming in and out of these doors between November and March. That is what keeps this whole business going for them. They needed something else to do in the summer, because the kids are going to go outside. They're going to go play at other fields. They're going to be outdoors. But the skate park was able to be in here because they weren't utilizing it for anything else. So it made sense for them financially and business-wise to put it in. And then they got too old and they took it down and they said, we can't put it back up anymore, not for financial reasons, but physically we're just incapable of doing it. And, for as much as we heard people say, oh, we need a skate park, nobody bothered to come down here knowing that this existed for the last 20 years and go, hey, we'll help you put it up. I mean, we deal with it every year. Like we said, we ask volunteers. Now we pay people to do it because we've at least gotten to that point. But I mean, getting volunteers in here, like, it's hard because most of us work, most of us have stuff to do. I get that. But at the same time, like, if you really want something, you're going to work for it, whether it's physically, whether it's for monetary value, whatever it is. And it just kind of like that first year, we got a good amount of help. But when we got to the second year and everybody was just kind of like, don't really care. I'm like, do we do this? Like, is it worth it? But then we found that, our bigger, amount of people coming in customer base wise was kids. Kids aren't going to help us put a skate park together because most of them are under the age of 14.
yeah, nor do you want them
Physically, honest to God, we have a couple kids that are under 14 that are excellent. They help us and they're able to help us, but most kids aren't because they're kids, and we get that. So like, yeah, parents might be able to stop in once or twice with their kids to help out, but that is the basis of our clientele are younger kids. So like, that's kind of what we've started modeling the park for, is for kids that don't necessarily know how a skate park works. They've never really been involved in one, and we're kind of growing that because that's important. You lose that when you don't have any other skate parks in the area. These kids start losing that interest or don't know it exists because it doesn't. It's not there in their area. So you get the few in-betweens that watch YouTube videos, watch Instagram and go, oh, that looks really cool to do. Where could I do that? Oh, nowhere around here? Never mind. Now that they at least have that option, it gets more kids interested.
Yeah, there's no public parks out here, are there?
Nope. Well, there's the closest ones are Sunbury, Bloomsburg,
all over an hour away.
Danville.
Yeah, Danville. So that's all at least an hour away. Which I mean, at the same time, you know, they all had.
Stroudsburg, I think, has one.
Is it still there? I think it's.
I
Still
think
there.
they still have the Blue Park. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, but you look at the backstory of all those parks. There was, I mean, I don't know it, so I'm just kind of spitballing. But I mean, you know, there was probably someone at every single council meeting just chirping away, hey, we need a skate park, we need a skate park. You know, a bunch of riders show up consistently, not just once because, oh, it's on the agenda. Like that's the way to get anything done. And I mean, her and I, like we could, but we also don't have the time to constantly show up. And I mean, you know, we talked to the 2 or 3 council members that have been pro skate park in Wilkes-Barre, and they basically just tell us, you know, we'd love to do it, but we have, number one, we have to get everybody on board. Number two, the city doesn't have the money to do it. And, you know, there's more important things to do, really. I mean, you know, you're bitching about a skate park, but you can't drive down the street more than 100 feet without hitting 16 potholes. What's more important? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right, and I like it, where we are in this day and age. Reading is, you know, trying to put their skate park together, and they're an excellent, you know, resource for how this comes about. You know, it's taken them, 6 years now?
Yeah.
And they still haven't built yet. So it's 6 years of a couple people that
Working
put their
on getting
heads
the
together, constantly going on. I mean, they're at this every day. They're constantly trying to find funding, and now they're at the point 6 years in where they have most of the funding. They may lose some of their funding, especially with all of this going on now, because you only get X amount of time to utilize that funding.
Yeah.
So they may have been given a grant for one thing. They may have gotten, you know, money from the state for another thing, but if they don't use it in a certain amount of time, they lose it. And that becomes a big problem too. So like, you really have to be constantly working at it, constantly going for it. And people don't see that. They just think like, oh, skate park's gonna pop up. It's gonna be there. You know, we're gonna ask for it 1 month and like a year later it's gonna be there. And it's not the case. Like It is consistent, constantly working at it, having people that are taking the time out of their day to really like go to council meetings, understand what's going on with their city, understand where they can make it work, working alongside the city. They're not necessarily working with the city, they're working alongside it. And most people don't see that. They just go, oh no, we just need a skate park. Like, I get it, I do. The kids need resources, I understand that, but you also need to understand what your city needs too, because at the end of the day, everything's a business, including your city.
Yep.
Like, and that this area, like, man, their finances are all out of whack right now.
I think the entire country, if not world's finances are broken.
Sure.
Right
Yeah, unfortunately.
But I mean, we also kind of, I felt anyway, that we kind of started behind the 8 ball because a couple of years ago, before we started, there was a movement and a real push to get a skate park in the area, a public one. And I think there was a couple different times. One time I know they raised all this money, and then it was either one time or 2 times where the money disappeared. And then there was one where I guess the crew that was working or trying to work with the city said, okay, we want a concrete park. And the city said, well, here's the piece of land. What if we give you, we'll give you a wooden one? Nope, we want concrete. Well, what if we give you prefab? No, we want concrete. So it was, okay, we'll give you concrete. You have to come up with half the money. And then that's where it kind of died. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it's not easy. And there's a plot of land that the county has had in their, I guess, does UGI have it?
Yeah.
So one of the utility companies owns it. It's reclaimed. Is it reclaimed for natural gas? It's reclaimed property. So they basically can't do much of anything with it.
Other than make it recreational.
So they said to this county, we'll give you this land for recreational purposes. And they kind of, I guess, tabled the idea of putting a skate park there.
Mm-hmm. No, UGI wants to put a
That's
skate
what it
park
is.
there.
So
Yeah.
they said, here's the land, use it for a skate park. But the county's just kind of doing everything but.
They're trying to find any way around it. So this past year, we were going to meetings for Luzerne County I don't know if you're familiar with the Wilkes-Barre, like that riverfront property that's down there.
Not really.
So there's a lot that goes on down there. They have Kirby Park, they have Nesbitt Park, they have the whole walkway and the bike trails up there. So there's a lot of stuff that they're looking into to do all at the same time, which I think is a little overwhelming, even as a city, trying to do so many things all at once. And even one of the guys that was part of that meeting who had built the riverfront itself said, we went way over budget and we should have not done this to begin with. Now we need to figure out how to fix it. So that's what they were looking at. And part of it was trying to bring the skate park on board, because that other piece of property does kind of connect with it, but it doesn't. There's actually a big street that kind of goes in between all that land. But legally speaking, the land would all connect, all of the insurance would stay the same.
Yeah, it could tie in easily.
Right. So every time we went to the meeting, the skate park was like off on the side. I was finally like, you know what, I'm done going to meetings. I'm like, there's no want to talk about this at all. They just kept putting it on a hot plate, and they were like, well, we'll deal with it later. We'll deal with it later. And I'm like, you don't want to deal with it. I'm like, and that's fine. I'm like, but that doesn't mean 2 years from now, once this is all set up and Keystone's on its own footing, I'm not going to go to UGI and go, yo, how do you want to do this? How can we make this work? And, because the city doesn't currently own it right now, and they probably won't for years, because they just don't have the finances to do it. So we know that that's a possibility, and it's a good possibility to make something that's an outdoor recreation fully usable by everybody. Getting there, again, it takes time and effort. It's not something that we can do right now. It's something we can do in a couple of years once everything else has settled, and we see, especially with all of this going on right now, how everything's going to play out, how we're going to be able to do things. But it's definitely, a thought, knowing that that's available and knowing the information behind it. It's just getting more information, understanding what we can do, and spending the time doing it.
But at the same time, during the meetings, it was another one of those things where there was more important stuff that was on the table. Not that a skate park or kids having anything to do isn't important, but I mean, the other stuff they were talking about is increasing the cleanliness of the area and the security of the area, because people don't feel comfortable because there's a lot of homeless people to live down there. So, I think that would precede a skate park on a priority list. There's that, and then the repairs that they have to make to the concrete, because there's a section of it being used as a skate park, because we've asked for one for so many years, and now you give us something that's vaguely familiar, kind of looks like a skate park. There's some ledges and some wedges, so we're going to use this as a skate park. But it's like, and it's concrete, it's going to get chipped up no matter what you do to it. So it's, there's stuff that's higher on the priority list as far as revitalizing, remodeling, whatever you want to call it, that area of the park system in the city.
And there is one other indoor park here, right? They're just like on and off.
Yeah,
I can't think of what their name is.
Yeah, there's Underwood up in
Yeah.
Taylor, and we've gotten calls asking if they're open, and I'm just like, we aren't them, so why would you call us? I call them.
Yeah,
what do you want me to tell
come
you?
here and ride. It's cool.
Yeah, I'm like, we're open, but if call up there and whatever. I mean, but I guess the best deal for them is just to check their Facebook to see if they're open that day, that week, how they're running it.
I don't know. It seems very inconsistent, which is really tough when you're a business and you have clients that want to come utilize your service.
Right.
Which, I mean, he also has the deal where, if you want to come ride, send me a message. I'll set up a time to be there.
Yep.
So, I mean, he also he's been doing the by appointment thing on his own. So, and I mean, that's basically what we're going to have to be, that's basically what we're going to have to do this year.
Is that what you're looking at, is pretty much by appointment?
Yeah, I think it's the safest way without us getting in trouble for anything, is to just, say, listen, we can have 10 people for an hour, and you're going to book it online. We're going to send you the waiver through email. Everything's going to be done at home until you get here. And that way, nobody has to wait at the desk. All we have to do is take a temperature, in you go.
Yeah, are you going to have them pay for their session online then?
Yeah, so that is one thing that we have to figure out how that's going to work, because we do get a lot of kids that handle cash. I am hoping by this point, 3 months out, where most people have been stuck using credit cards and buying things online, that they're more familiar with it. But worst case scenario, we may have like a set day where you can come down, grab a gift card, do something that'll allow you to be able to purchase online for the rest of the, the time. But that's a huge, concern, because I mean, as much as like our landlords would always laugh at us, we'd have days where we'd be slammed, and then we'd have days where only 2 kids came in. You're a business, you expect that, even if you were a nonprofit, you expect that, because you don't know when people are going to show up. But at the same time, that's going to cause a problem with what's going on right now if we have 20 or 30 kids show up and there's kids playing soccer here. We already have kids in the park. Now we got to kick you out the door, and you just wasted a whole trip. So I think the safer way of going about it, without causing more headaches, without causing more inconsistencies and everything, is just go, listen, order it online. This is the time you're coming at. We're good. Now we know when you're going to be here, and we know when we have to be here, and we have in the past too. Like, we've had parents and kids that'll utilize our system online regardless, to be able to buy their online tickets, but we also allowed them to buy their own sessions outside of the hours that we were open on a regular time, because again, some kids work, older riders work, they have time in the morning, they don't have time in the afternoon, so we'd have that available for them if they needed to use it.
Or if they had younger kids, if there
Right.
was somebody, well, my 6 and 7-year-old wants to come to the skate park, but what about my 3-year-old that just kind of wants to putt around? Well, all right, can you come in at 2 o'clock? We'll give you a 2-hour session before we open.
Right.
So but back to what you said with some days we're slammed, some days we're slow. Like a day like today where it's 85 degrees outside, you wouldn't think that a lot of people would come in. But then the end of the night when we're closing up, you look and there's 10, 15 kids that rolled through the door. Granted, they were only here for a half hour or an hour because it's so hot. And then days where it pours, you get 2 people, and it's just totally backwards. You never know, we never know how it's going to go or what the day is going to look like. And the first year we were looking at the weather every day, seeing what it was going to be. Oh, we're probably going to be busy today. And it
There's
wasn't
no
anything.
rhyme or reason.
It's
Absolutely none.
And she'd say to me, well, how do we get people in here? I'm like, you don't. They either show up or they don't. That's the nature of a skate park. It's the weirdest, shittiest business model you could possibly think of.
Yeah, and it's almost like the harder you push, the harder the scene will push against you in a way, too.
And she would say to me, she's like, well, what got you guys here, when you were riding? I'm like, I don't know. We all just got online. We all just, started a chat of all of us, because that's what you did before you had a smartphone that you could just send a text to 50. Yeah, back in the day, kids. And
chat rooms.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's so weird now. Now it's just a group chat. It's not a chat room anymore. But we would all just be like, all right, let's go to the Dome Wednesday. Okay. And whether it was raining, sunny, snowing, whatever, it didn't matter. We just all went there. And I think that had a lot to do with it too, because I see a lot.
Group.
Right. I see a lot of these kids where the social aspect of what we can do now with technology is kind of working in the reverse, where, we all got on AIM that one time and let's go here at this time. We would roll to Incline Club or ECT 3 or 4 cars deep, fully packed. And, these kids now, we've gotten kids that show up that they look through the window. Oh, well, my friend Joe's here. Don't you know that?
Yeah. How did you not know?
Right.
And then we've seen kids put up on Facebook, hey, I'm going to the Dome at this time, and nobody responds. And it's what am I missing?
Or you get a lot of kids that like to ride by themselves. They're happier to be in the park with the whole park to themselves than having a group of kids with them. And I'm like, how does this work?
Yeah, it's just the whole, and the riding culture in itself is just totally different from what I'm used to, and then that's all I know. So she'll say to me, well, how do you get kids in? Why did you go somewhere? I'm like, to be honest, I saw it in a video that I waited 6 months to come out. I saw it in a props, and I'm like, oh, I want to go there. Oh shit, it's in Louisville, Kentucky. Well,
all right,
now we
pack
gotta
up the car.
drive.
4 fucking hours. Let's go. But it's the culture is just not there anymore. It's that. And it may be in some aspects, but what we see, I don't think it's there anymore. I mean, even the bike shop that I'm semi-associated with, he'll run van trips where he'll fill up a van and go to an outdoor park. He'll go to the one in York or one in Jersey or something. But it's
it's pulling teeth. He's constantly complaining
whether
because
to
the
clean
rise
the
will
van.
say
I think I've seen that on his Facebook.
Yeah,
because you're talking about planes.
Yeah,
right?
planes bike.
Yeah, so whether it's cleaning the van or he'll bitch to me oh, this one always stiffs me on gas. I'm like, well, don't take them. Like if
you collect at the door.
Right,
Like,
absolutely.
You want to get in the van. This is your deposit for the
Right.
trip.
Or I remember the one time we went with them on a trip, and one of the kids did not bring the waiver with them, and they were like, "You can't ride," so we had to sit there with us, or me and Kev, for the whole thing because he wasn't allowed to ride. I'm like, how? You knew you were going on this trip. You knew you needed the waiver. How did you not, like?
Why did you not check that before you departed?
Sure.
Make sure that they
Well,
had
sure,
it.
absolutely, absolutely. And I mean,
That's a lesson learned for him, but
well, I mean, at the same time, I understand his side of it too. Like, he is doing these kids a favor, taking
Yeah,
them somewhere.
for sure.
So at the least, the child or parent should be responsible enough to go, "Yo,
Do
we're
I need a
sending
waiver,
you
a
on
helmet?"
this trip.
Right.
Make sure you have everything." It shouldn't be up to him. I mean,
Right.
he's already taken enough time out of his day and out of his business to take them somewhere. Like,
yeah.
you know, how do you? There's only so much
Yeah.
you can do. You know, that's like when the kids come in here and they forget helmets. Like that I can guarantee that will be a huge problem this year because we are not allowed to do rentals because of all of this going on. I don't know how many times we had kids come in here that forgot their helmet or don't own a helmet, and they're like, "Well, I need a rental," and like we'd be full out because we'd be packed.
Yeah.
And 20 other kids before them had forgotten their helmet or didn't have a helmet, and it's like, well, now you gotta wait. But
Yeah, there was a day last year we had a show inside, or was it last year or the year before? It was either last year or
it
the
was
year
last
before.
year.
Yeah.
Wasn't this year?
Yeah, well, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely not this year.
Not yet, anyway.
Yeah.
But we had a show going on, and I think it was shitty out. So we
We had kids from out of the area as part of that show.
Yeah.
So they had never been here. This was all new and cool.
We
to
had
them.
a full, like the place was full. We ran out of rentals even before the band kids showed up. They showed up and they're like, "Oh, well, can we ride the skate park?" I'm like, "What the hell are you gonna ride?" "Well, you guys rent scooters." "Yeah." So we were out of scooters. We were out of helmets. We had to pull some of the helmets that we had for sale, slap RampWorks stickers on them, and use them as rentals. And it's like that because like we just had people keep coming and they're like, "Do you have any scooters?" I'm like, "No, one of your boys has it out there. Like, share one." And they're like, "Okay." Like they just, and I mean, it works out, but I mean, there's some times where it just doesn't work out. You get a brother and a sister that don't want to share something, and
Yeah, that's always a problem.
But
Yeah. That's a tough one.
yeah, so
Is the coffee shop a separate business?
No, we have it all under the same right now.
It's all under Keystone RampWorks.
So essentially,
that's a fun conversation for the start of that one too.
Yeah.
With the SBDC.
I'm not even going there. Yeah,
I will, 'cause-
SBA and SBDC.
I was gonna say
are
I will
not my
because I like
friend.
telling the story. Initially, we had two separate business plans, one for the skate park, one for the coffee house. And when we decided to put them together ourselves, we were doing it, but kind of just saying, okay, well, we kind of have two different.
We didn't legally know what we could do. We were
Right.
at the part of, can we merge this together as one business, or legally does it have to be two separate businesses because of the insurance and everything?
And if we can combine it, how do we make it make sense to anyone, whether it's an investor, landlord, whatever? Here's what we want to do. So we gave it to the SBDC.
Which is the Small Business Development Center for everybody that does not know what that is.
Well, they have Google. Let them figure
this
it
is
out.
true.
Let them do a little bit of thumb work.
Well, I was gonna ask just for the
Yeah.
for the
He's
clarification
the host,
on here
let him
anyway.
ask.
But no, she's the veteran though.
Yeah, she knows what the hell she's talking about. I'm just firing from the hip. So we said, all right, you guys do it, help us out, make it make sense. All they did was copy and paste like every other paragraph on top of each other. So it literally took the two business plans, slapped them together, played shuffle. Here you go.
To put this in perspective, and the reason I got so fired up about it, anybody who's ever had to write a business plan knows it takes at least 3 months. It is not an easy process. It is pages upon pages of information, duplicate information, because you were trying to explain this to an investor in as much detail as possible so they entrust and get what you're doing, because they're essentially giving you money. And when they came back to me 3 days after I gave them two separate business plans and said, "Oh yeah, here it's done," I went, "There's something seriously wrong with this." And to see that it was just copied and pasted, I was like, I couldn't get through.
You're like, I could have done that.
Literally, him and I looked at it. We couldn't get through a paragraph because it made absolutely no sense, because they had literally taken bits and pieces and just blah, 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 and you're like, what did I just read? Like, who decided to, it's like 2020. That's what it looked like. It's just a whole mess of what was going on in two different businesses. And you're like, that's not going to work. So we had to waste, another month merging them together once we learned that we could.
Yeah,
Is there like a weird overlap of insurances then, where you're kind of like, because when
Right,
you with the
so-
skate park you're paying for like
The skate park.
coverage and liability,
Mm-hmm.
then there's food and
Right.
whatever's involved in the restaurant.
So-
Is there a middle ground that you're like kind of paying for it all then?
So right now, like the way the insurance works for us, the way that we have it broken down, they know when you send in for insurance, they want to know how long you're operating for, what's operating, da-da-da. Like we actually learned our first year that it would have cost us $1,000 more because I worded it improperly. They asked for your menu, and I have French fries on the menu, but we bake our French fries. They didn't know that. It just said French fries. And my insurance guy was like, how do you cook the fries? I'm like, we bake them. And he's like, you need to put that down. I was like, why? He goes, it's $1,000 difference in your insurance if you have a fryer or you don't have a fryer. And I was like, holy crap. So that saved us a boatload of money not having the deep fryer here. But what ends up happening with our insurance is the months that we're open for the skate park, it is an astronomical amount. And then the months that we just have the kitchen going, it's a normal amount. So anybody that runs a restaurant, it's roughly like $300-400 a month for insurance just to have a restaurant. It goes way up, obviously, having the skate park because of the liabilities involved in that. But yeah, so we do get a break in the sense that we have the two of them and we only run 6 months out of the year with the skate park, if that. So it does save us to some extent. But the reason we ended up merging them together is the kitchen does save the skate park. So as much as we're only able to be here 6 months out of the year, even during those 6 months, the kitchen covers the rest of the costs for the rent, for the insurance, for everything that goes on in the skate park. Like, I don't think any skate park would ever survive strictly on being a skate park. They either need to have a bike, pro shop, or, something else to go along with it. It by itself is never going to have the amount of money made to cover just the cost of the rent alone. So it's like you have to have something. So that's the skate park's saving grace, is having the food along with it.
Unless you have some kind of weird, not even weird, but just like a niche market like the Wheel Mill or like Ray's, because like I honestly think if Ray's didn't have any of the the bike sales or any of that shit, they would be fine. I don't know.
Yeah,
for
I don't
sure,
know.
but I
Right.
mean, but like they just, like you can't go there on a weekend and it's not packed in the winter.
But them and the Wheel Mill are like a special example too, though, because
Exactly.
they're not in my opinion, they're not a skate park.
No,
they're a
bike
family
park.
destination trip.
Right.
Sure.
So it's like you'll pack up the family, drive out there. Maybe you're just in Pittsburgh for whatever, but the whole family can go to this bike park
Sure,
thing.
you rent bikes.
Right.
You could.
And every single person that goes there for, say, like a Saturday, $30, $30, $30,
Right.
$30
Right.
bucks. Then, we need to rent bikes too, and helmets and whatever. All right, well, now you're
$20,
racking
$20,
that
$20,
on. Yeah.
right.
And then, we can get snacks and stuff here, or a shirt. It's a souvenir at that point, right?
Right.
It's not like, man, I love the park, I want to rep it. It's a souvenir for your trip
Sure.
that you
Sure,
made.
absolutely.
But, like,
Strip
I
that
don't-
all away.
I
and-
don't know that the local scene is
Right.
what pays the bills.
No, absolutely not.
Absolutely.
I think it's being a destination.
Sure.
Yeah.
So that's harder to do with a small square footage space
Right.
and just skate park in general. So I guess what I would think is that you kind of have to look at memberships, right? Like, do you do
Right.
a membership here?
We did the last 2 years. Some of them got utilized. I think last year was a little bit busier because people finally realized that we had it and it was available. This year I am not, because we don't know if we're going to get shut down again. And I don't want to put people through that of like, hey, you have a membership and now it's only good for 3 weeks. So, we're just trying to make it work as best we can. So we do the loyalty point system, which we have done from the beginning. So every time they get an admission, every time they buy something at the snack bar, or, the coffee house, they get points racked up and they can use that towards a free admission, towards a helmet, whatever they need to do. So they at least have that in their back pocket to be able to, come back and be able to utilize it while we're open. Because again, we don't have a guarantee of one, when we're going to be able to open, or two, when we're going to have to close. Because as much as we may have until October by the dome's standards,
Right, in theory.
we don't know what's happening in September, August. Who knows?
Yeah, right. And even to do a 1 month membership interval is like,
You never know.
you're right. It might be 2 weeks, might
Sure.
be 3 weeks.
Right.
You might be right back in red or yellow, and where do you go from there?
Right.
I haven't even checked my bank account, and frankly, I don't care if the wheel mill is still. I'm assuming they're not billing us for our monthly
You would hope,
memberships.
but you never know.
But like, quite honestly, as a member that supports going to that park all the time, like,
Sure.
Right.
bill me my $45 a month that I
Yeah,
pay
it's-
for the park.
yeah, it's
right.
fine.
Like, you can have it. I just need you here when we're done.
Right.
Sure. And I mean, that's.
And I'm sure a handful of other members would feel that way, but at the same time, I bet you that if that charge hit their bank account, they'd be like, I can't use this service. Why are you charging me?
Right.
And that's probably like I would assume that I'm not getting charged because that's going to be harder to deal with than the people that
Right.
are like cool with it.
Right.
But I mean, that's a number that I just threw out there. I pay $45 a month for all the riding I can do.
Sure.
But I'm committed for a year. They'll bill me every month for a
Right.
year.
Right.
And if you get enough of your local scene on that, the whole park just becomes like a hub.
Sure. Absolutely.
I just go to the wheel mill and warm up for a half hour and then go ride street with my friends.
Sure.
Or whatever. It's not like you just avoid the place entirely,
Right.
which is kind of key, I think, in a way.
You would hope.
But I guess, I mean, that's what you're saying. How do you get people to the park? And it's like, you, on one hand, a skate park and a bike shop, they're providing a service, but you're not always paying for the service that you value out of that, which is like the community meetup point and,
Right.
Right.
and hub. You're paying for a session, which it's like, it just gets kind of a gray area of like, well, I don't want the session today, but I'd still come by, hang out for a half hour, say what's
Sure.
up, and
Right.
like,
Sure. I mean, we've had, you know, friends and customers that just come in. Oh, you know, I'm just in the area, just want to stop by and say what's up. Yeah, that's cool. Like you don't have to ride to come and hang out. It's not a big deal. That's kind of what we would push last year. Well, any year, that even like when we were, especially now, like when it's nice out and we're slow, it's like, hey, supporting us doesn't mean you have to come in and sweat your ass off to ride out there for an hour or whatever. Just come in, grab something to eat. You just come in and get a bottle of water. You know, like you don't have
Right.
to. You don't have to spend 2 hours here or $50. Like it's not. We don't need every single person to. I mean, it'd be nice for everybody to come in and
It
come
would
and ride.
make the permanent skate park happen a lot
Exactly,
faster.
but I mean, you know, any purchase gets us there. I mean, just come in, buy a pair of grips. I mean, we had a couple of guys come in last year that were just looking for a tube on a Sunday and didn't want to go to Walmart and spend $8 because we
Yeah.
have them for like $4.25. Oh, all right, yeah, fine. I don't care. You want to take it apart and
are you
on
the only
floor, go
reasonable
for it.
bike shop selling tubes at a reasonable price?
Apparently,
I
yeah.
don't know. I mean, ours don't come in a box. I guess that's why they're so much cheaper. I have no idea, but
No, I think it's because everyone wants like 300% and 400% markup on tubes.
possibly.
Yeah, we try not to be those businesses, which I mean probably hurts us in the
Long run.
long run.
Big picture.
Yeah,
no, I don't agree.
investors. That's investors don't like that. They want to see high markups because they want to see a good amount of profit coming through, which I get to an extent. But at the same time, like you have people like that own the dome that are in the same mindset as us, just like the people that helped them create the dome. They have that mindset. So you just have to find the right people that have that community mindset that understand where they live, what they're dealing with, what their demographic is, and know that like you're not going to make $1 million, and that's not the goal. The goal isn't to make money. The goal is to have a place to go, and
And make a living. Or like be able to survive.
We never
whatever.
even wanted.
Not-
The only thing we ever really wanted, like our main goal for this, financially anyway, is just so it sustains itself. So we don't have to keep putting our own money into it. We're not taking a paycheck. We're not taking a cent out of it. It's because we aren't looking for that. We know that a skate park isn't going to make $1 million or $1.
Mm-hmm.
we're
it's
just happy if it pays for itself.
right. If it pays for itself,
are you a
that's
nonprofit?
fine.
No.
Okay.
No, that screws a lot of people up because they get all pissy with us because we're a business, but they didn't know the backside of this. So there's a lot of red tape when you become a nonprofit. And I learned when we were initially writing those business plans and learning, I didn't know the area because I'm not from the area. He knew a little bit more, but I had to learn the demographic. I had to learn like what was going on here. I learned that, Wilkes-Barre is $54 million in debt and still sinking. So there was a lot going on with that. But when you become a nonprofit, you tend to fight more with a city and a county because you're not paying taxes, you're not paying into the city, you're not doing anything to help your community. And when we sat down and we made the business plan and we went, what is this for? To help the community. Well, the last thing I want to do is be a nonprofit and not help the community. So I was like, yeah, we need to be a business and pay the property taxes and pay the taxes that come into this. So you get most people that understand that. You'll still get like a small percentage that'll like flip shit and be like, oh, well, you're a business, so like I don't understand. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay. Just gonna let go.
Yeah.
So, and it does help overall because we have less red tape to jump through being a business. We can go to the city and be like, hey, we're doing this as a business. We're paying you property tax. We're paying taxes. It's helping you guys out. And they're less likely to fight us on things when we say we're doing them. So it does help a lot showing, because like that was the other thing that I learned with Wilkes-Barre. Any place when you learn about like how many businesses and nonprofits are involved, usually a city holds about 3% overall for nonprofits. Wilkes-Barre sits at 26%. Is a massive jump in nonprofits.
So there's like no benefit to being a nonprofit here.
Especially not in this city. Like I think that's really what puts the city in a lot of debt, is because they have Wilkes University, they have King's College, and they have what other college? Or is it just King's and Wilkes?
It's just King's and Wilkes downtown.
But
King's is the really bad one because
Yeah.
they have the nonprofit thing and they're religious.
Right.
So they ain't paying taxes to nobody.
They take up a lot of property on top of it, so Wilkes-Barre loses a lot of their property, a lot of the property taxes that go within, and that eats up way more. Just those two colleges alone eats up way more than 3% of what the total of the city brings in. And then they allow all of these other nonprofits to come in on top of it, and like they're just not checking anything. They're just kind of like, oh, you're a nonprofit, you're a business, whatever. And they didn't see how that was affecting them overall. And like I think the new mayor that just came in is trying to correct that now and trying to work with that, but we have yet to see that because he's only been in office for what, like 6 months?
January, yeah.
Not even.
I think the poor bastard.
I don't think that's his biggest concern
I
at the
feel
moment.
so bad for him right now.
Yeah, he just kind of stepped into this shit show. But.
Yeah, so.
I feel bad for anyone that's in charge of anything right now.
Yeah, it's just unprecedented.
It's very trying.
These uncertain times.
Ugh,
It will get
gross.
over that hurdle eventually.
Yeah,
Gross.
Give it a couple weeks, people will forget about it.
one can only hope.
Yeah. No. What's next though? What's coming next? We had World War III in January.
Yeah.
We had, I forget what, in like February-ish, and we had coronavirus for a couple months.
Now we have the Civil War too.
Now we skipped the Murder Hornets.
Yep, we did. Yeah, we started there, and then everyone's like, no, we'll worry about that.
That'll come out in the deleted scenes on 2020
that's
that
in the
releases
director's
in
cut.
the extended version on Blu-ray early
that's the
spring
director's
2021.
Yeah, now we have the second Civil War that's bubbling around. So.
Well, then we get to come into earthquakes and hurricanes.
Oh,
I
saw the
That's the new thing
earthquakes
is
out at
hurricanes.
Yellowstone, right?
Yep.
Well, the hurricanes are coming back for Louisiana, so they just got the evacuation order yesterday.
Nice.
Parts of it. So now, we'll be dealing with that again.
Cool. Well, let's just keep 2020 strong. Don't let us down. 2021, quote unquote, can't be worse.
But
You
wait,
say
there's
that
more.
now.
Oh yes. So you had the skate park for 3 years. You only had the coffee shop for 2. You said, right? Before we started talking here, that wasn't.
No, the skate park and the coffee house have always been combined. The
It was structured differently
coffee
behind the
house,
scenes.
yeah. So the now coffee house is not what it was that first year. When we came in here that first year, it was like a whirlwind of like, just get stuff together, let's get this going, because like I think we opened in 2 weeks from when
we came and talked to Ed and Sue, who owned the Dome. I think it was like the end of February, just to kind of see if they still had the ramps, what they were doing with them, would they be willing to sell them, lease them to us, whatever.
So that happened real quick then.
Yes.
And then Ed kind of said, well, we're dead in the summer. If you guys want to throw it up and try it out, you bring the people, we'll work with you. And we're like, okay. So we had to, like, within a month, get all of our ducks in a row and, you know, with the waiver, and get people to come in and help and do this and do that. And so it was just,
which that was more work than throwing a kitchen together. So I worked with what she already had going on in the kitchen. And I was like, this will be good enough for this year. It'll get us by. We've got the drinks. We've got everything going on in there to get us through for the season. So that kind of got put on the back burner. And when we came into the second year, that's when we were like, okay, we have the skate park thing figured out. That was the more important part. Now we'll figure out the kitchen part. So yeah, it was chaotic that first year, because we literally, it was like a month and a half. We went from like 0 to 60 because it was like we couldn't find a place, and then we're opening in 2 weeks. Like, wow.
and then on top of that, like so this is the first year this would have been the first year where we completely took over the kitchen, and it would have been, you know, more so a part of Keystone RampWorks than being the sports dome. But I mean, like, the first year we just kind of ran with what we had. Second year we brought in some of our own food ideas and drink ideas and whatnot, and then this year with the winter we kind of ran the kitchen for them for the softball season and everything, and we took all of our stuff, most of their stuff, and combined it, kept it, and, you know, sort of figured out the best short order cook way of doing all the food items to kind of, because I mean the line gets ridiculous during the winter when they're
dealing with a lot of people and like a 20-minute break in between games. So it's like literally all the teams and people that we're watching all pile out all at the same time, and you go, okay, how do we do this? So it is like, it is completely different, and like trying to prepare our employees for that, like, until you're in it, like, you just don't get it. You're like, oh yeah, skate park, 5 people, 10 people, no big deal. And then all of a sudden it's like 50 people all at once, and you have 10 minutes to get the food out onto the table, ready to go, and them fed so they can get back out on the field and go do what they were doing. And yeah, until you're in the thick of it, you're like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. And then you see it, you're like,
Yeah, like with Square, we can we can check how we're doing daily on our phones and whatnot. So like, I'd be working on Saturday morning, and I'd just kind of be looking at like, we're kind of slow today. And then at about 10 o'clock, there's just a spike where like whatever we made just like tripled, and I'm like, oh my, today's gonna be rough. And then I'd show up, and we had the Grubhub stuff going on top of that, so I would show up, and there'd be a couple of times where like an order just came in for Grubhub, so there's a line of people here. I'd come in and she'd say, we're out of this, you have to go get this, and you have to take this Grubhub order, so wait, hold on. So now I'm trying to get
multitasking.
Right, I'm trying to get in the register to grab cash for the Grubhub order so I have change, get the Grubhub order. She's trying to rattle off stuff that I have to go get. Then I go and I'm just like, oh, this is nice, I just get to be in the car. And then when I come back, it's totally dead. And I'm like, what? She's like, we got it. I'm like, okay. It's just and you can't tell anyone this is what you're going to do, because eventually it just goes to shit in like two or three customers.
So like, and that was the thing too, like, and why I wanted to take over the kitchen, not necessarily for our benefit to help the skate park, but just the kitchen for the Dome itself was always an afterthought. Because I get it, it doesn't make them a lot of money. They do make their money from the sporting facility, and we're the complete opposite, where the kitchen completely saves the skate park. So when I came into it the first year, while she was running it during there, like, I got to see how everything functioned during that chaotic mess. And like, she just tried to run everything always. She was trying to be the short order cook, the cashier, the drink person, and there was just no rhyme or reason to how that kitchen was functioning. I'm like, okay, there are reasons that businesses do things a certain way because it works. I'm like, so let's do that. And once I at least got her in that mindset to understand, like, you can have somebody at the register that just handles the drinks, that just grabs the food behind them and gets it out on the counter. They don't have to be making the food in the back, coming out to the front, ringing them up, doing this, doing that. And she was like, well, no, it doesn't work that way. I'm like, I swear to God it does. I'm like, watch.
You can
I'm
put
like,
three times as much
Let me do
out
this for you.
with 2 people.
Correct, right. You know, so it could, and once she saw it and she understood, because I get, like, some people, when you explain things to them, it doesn't make sense. They have to physically see it. She's that type of person. She needs to physically see it happening. Once she saw that, like, I mean, how many times did we kick her out of the kitchen this year? Because she'd come in and she'd be like, well, do you need help?
And like didn't know, like she couldn't do register. She couldn't do half of the food stuff. Like the grab and go stuff she was fine with, but I'm just
But
like.
she realized that she was in the way because literally the 3 people that were working in the kitchen had everything under control. Where she would have 5 or 6 people in the kitchen, that it was mad chaos. So we cut down the amount of employees that were working in the kitchen, made it a smooth, you know, transaction, made sure, like, that first year that we helped her run the kitchen, it was like a constant, somebody was up at that counter saying, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, I didn't get that, and she had no way to track it. She wasn't paying attention to like what was coming in and out and like who got what. So we have a system that shows us who got what. And there was no, like, I think we only had the people coming back to complain about their food. They didn't have enough bacon on their sandwich. That was a rough one. There's a lot of laughing going on in the background, but you're trying to take the customer seriously and you're like, okay.
Or the guy that got mad because he thought we were a Denny's because we had egg patties for our sandwiches, and he was trying to order eggs over easy and scrambled, and I'm like, yo, bud, it's an egg patty. Like,
But I
calm
mean,
down on that.
That first year compared to our second year, like that massive change, like, and a lot of these people that come here for sports, they're here every year. So like most of them, I would say 90% of them were happy to see the changes, which was good because like they were like, it was so much faster. Like things got out to us. Like,
and even
they
like
loved it.
Even the food, like it wasn't normal concession stand food.
Right. You know, they
which,
could
like,
actually eat here.
There was a lot of people that would stand there and be like, oh my God, you have grilled cheese? We're like, yeah. Well, how is it? It's cheese and bread. You can't really screw up a grilled cheese. I'm like, get it and try it. What do you want me to tell you? And then the best one was, there's a lot of stuff up there. What would you recommend? And I said, I own this. I'm going to tell you the most expensive thing. Make your own decision. Like, oh, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm going to tell you, get a cheesesteak because it's $7.50. Like, what do you want me to tell you?
But it is one of our biggest sellers
Sure.
too. So I mean, like, but that's any restaurant.
Yeah, but
Anybody.
$7.50 for a cheesesteak sandwich is pretty good.
It's a reasonable, yeah, for what we get. I mean, and that's the other thing that we have to look at too.
As long as it doesn't suck.
Right, exactly. But you know, and that's something else that we have to bring up at some point too. Like, we don't know what's happening with the restaurant industry, with manufacturing, with food coming in. Like, are the prices going up? Are we going to have to, you know, adjust our prices for that? We have no idea right now because we don't know. We're in that fine line. Probably in the next month or two, we're going to see that spike in the cost of food. Like, I have seen it a little bit with the meat. It's gone up a little bit, but that's, you know, things aren't on hold quite yet. Like, they still had enough back stock to keep shipping things out. And now we're getting into that cycle of like, okay, things have been shut down for a couple months. They haven't been producing things. They've been throwing things away because there was no place to send them to because they couldn't get to that third party. And how is that going to affect us in another 2 months?
Yep.
Like, how do we adjust for that? Should we adjust for that? Should we just suck it up and be like, yeah, we'll keep the prices the same. Hopefully things will go back down or at least be reasonable. But we don't know.
Yeah, or are you literally going to be like week by week?
Right,
where it's like, well, this week it's $10. This week we're back to normal.
Or we're looking at the fact, you know, maybe, you know, there's no cheesesteak because there's no meat on the shelf. We don't know, you know, so I might be able to have it on the menu one weekend, not the next week. So, you know, and I've seen restaurants do that where like they make specific menus per day with what they could get available to them. And that may have to be the route that we go, knowing what's available to us. Like, do we just go out every day and go, okay, this is what we're getting for today, this is what's on the menu? Or do we suck it up and go, okay, we're going to buy all this stuff in hopes that it all exists?
Yeah, I've seen even the restaurants by my work, like in the drive-through line, it's just like lines through things. And it's like, out, unavailable. Like, this one we'll have in stock this date, this indefinitely out.
Sure,
like,
absolutely.
We just don't know.
Sure.
Right.
Or it's probably sporadic pricing where they're like, it makes more sense for us to not even bother than to lose money today, make money the next day.
Right.
So, yeah, it's a weird one. Then last year you had your, was it hand?
Yep, my finger. It sort of works.
Which
it's
is
like,
why we had to close early.
It's like 75% now.
Yeah, how many months were you open last year before you had to close?
Did we close in August?
It was August 18th.
August
was our last
18th we
day.
closed.
So it was
Okay.
only like 4 weeks earlier than usual.
Yeah, so we didn't lose as much, but I mean, at the same time, we also didn't have that wet of a summer. So we had a lot more hot days, a lot more sunny days, a lot more people were outside. Plus, the economy was starting to come back. So a lot more people were going on vacation and going places as opposed to staying home.
But at the same time, like overall, we did see more customers. We did grow our customer base. So like as much as it seemed to fluctuate and be awful, at the same time, like we were growing. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, that's a good thing. I'm like, as much as it seems like we're, having all of these problems, we were finding out, more people were finding out about us, even though we were only seasonal. So it's like, okay, we haven't lost touch with everything. We're not going downhill. We're staying steady. Good.
Yeah, because we had 600 customers and change our first year. And then at the end of last year, we had, did we have 1,000 or were we close to 1,000?
Well, we were at 1,200.
Yeah, 1,200. So we doubled, that's new
Okay.
customers through the door
Right.
at the end of last year. And that was, only being open a month less than we were the year before.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So it's the words getting out there. People are helping us, supporting us. Like, and it gets frustrating because you do only get to be open 6 months out of the year. So you worry through those 6 months that you're not open. Like, do people forget about us? Do we know what's going on? How do we stay in their ear? But I mean, most of these kids, they need a place to go, and this is the place for them to go because like their parents don't want to drive the hour somewhere else. They don't want to have to do that on a constant basis. So if they know for 6 months out of the year they can come here, they're like, okay, great, sold.
we also have the same problem that the Dome had when they would put it up and take it down every year. The setup's different every single year. The ramps are all the same. They're just in a different spot. So, you might be intimidated one year by one ramp and then it's in a completely different spot, completely different line the next year that's either not as intimidating or it's like, when they open up next year, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I'm ready for it. And it's like,
And even, last year we dealt with that a lot too because the first year we put up the 12-foot and the 15-foot quarters. They take like 3 days to put up by themselves. So you're talking a week just on those two ramps. So a lot of kids were complaining because we didn't have them up because, I wanted to try this and, it was so much better. Well, so figure out the new setup. It's not that much different. And last year we didn't really change it too much, but it was the second year we didn't put up the big quarters and we didn't put up the mini ramp. And we got asked why. The first year we had those 2 weeks, 30 different people that would show up for a day or a couple of days. A couple of them were there the entire time helping us set up. And then the year after that, there was, I think, 4 that were there consistently. So that's why, it takes a lot to put that mini ramp up, and we got asked about it so much last year that we put it up this year. And I pretty much
downsized everything else to make up for those days that we lost.
Yeah, and it took me just to do the framing, I think 2 or 3 days, and then it took us 2 days to do all the sheet. So that's 4 days, 1 ramp. And it's like that's why we can't put it up and take it down every year. If we had the 30 people coming in that were consistent every year, that we didn't have to. And I guess that's the more important thing of having the same people come back, because when you teach somebody 1 year, it's okay. But if you have a totally different crew, now you're dealing with the same thing of, not that it's rocket science putting that stuff up and putting it together, but there's a lot of like little inconsistencies and nuances that you kind of have to look out for. Like a lot of the studs, there's 2 sizes. It's 92 inches or 92 and 5/8. So they're not visibly shorter or longer than one another. So you can go and put an entire skeleton together and you get to the last one and it's like, why isn't this one going in? Or why is this one flopping around?
Yeah, why does the ply not?
Exactly.
Why is the sheeting off on this ramp?
Why are we so short on the sheet?
Tearing
It's
the
like,
whole thing
oh,
off.
shit. Yep. So now you're going back and doing it. And I mean, you try to keep everything separated, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there was a whole bundle that we would put on the golf cart, ran over to the one ramp, and we put them all on, and they were all the wrong size. But they were marked they were put in the wrong pile just from, when we stored them and when we took them back out. But I mean, it's a lot of work, and that's why we didn't put a lot of the stuff up. So we just kind of, even this year, we looked at it and it's like, what could we put up with the least amount of hands? So that's kind of why we ended up with basically a box rhythm that has a hip in the middle of it, the 4-foot box jump, and then a mini ramp with a 4-foot quarter on the other side of it. So it's not a lot, but I mean, the people that have seen the setup, they like it. They like the look of it, and they say it looks more spread out, which I don't agree with because it's less space, and we tried to cram more stuff in, or as much as we could. But I mean, riding it, it just feels the same. It doesn't feel like it's spaced out or tighter.
You're probably like the only one that knows that.
Well,
yep,
exactly.
Absolutely.
And that was the other thing too, because when the Dome would do their setup, they would post on their website like a month or two before they opened what the skate park was going to look like, and all it was just a view from the top with just blocks of what each ramp was. So just from riding here, I knew what it was going to look like each year, kind of have a pretty good idea. Like the flow might be a little different or weird, or this doesn't work where it should be over here. But so when I posted the first year, that's what I did. That's how I posted the setup, and everybody's like, "Well, what the hell is that?" and it didn't, I didn't have the connection to like, oh, you don't understand looking at. Plus, having 15 years worth of looking at blueprints, it helps a little bit too. But I'm just like, oh, I didn't even think of that. And then the one kid, when we did the initial meeting with how the layout was going to look our first year, he's like, well, I don't even know what I'm looking at. And it was just like, oh, I didn't even think of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was 16 at the time. So he basically he was 12 the last time the skate park was put up. So it was a whole, like, he has no idea that this even existed. And I mean, we still have kids that come in that are 15, 16, 17. Like, I never even knew that the Dome had a skate park. And it's because I rode it for so long, it's still kind of weird. But at the same time, it's not weird because I get it. It's still weird looking at a waiver and somebody's born after 2000. It's just like, it's a huge mind fuck to me. I'm just like, that I can't.
You're old.
Yeah, not even that I'm old.
And they're 20.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm looking at it and I'm like, this is so weird. And the ones that, it wasn't so bad last year. The ones that got me last year were after 2010. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, good God. Like, that's just, it's just so weird punching that in for a date that you're born.
A birthday.
It's so weird. But
yeah, but we're at the age where when we're filling stuff out on our phones, you just got to spin the wheel and wait.
Oh man.
Yeah, because some idiot decided to put the algorithm backwards, so it starts at 1900, and it's like, oh Jesus. But I did find out that on Square, when you put a customer in, they have to be, I think, 13. So instead of doing math, 2007, or like 2008, which won't come up, I just do 1908. So it still comes up as 08, and the math still works out. So you could
So we
circumvent
have
it.
really, really old customers. It's fine.
Yeah, we have a couple of hundred.
Benjamin Buttons.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
a couple of them.
I think they have been working, because I remember we contacted them about that, and they have been working on that and changing that, especially with like all of this going on right now. I mean, they're an excellent company to deal with as far as like registers go and like their whole system, because they're on the phone, they know how their system works, they have made it dummy proof, and like that's kind of how we're able to do so much online, is that they give us that opportunity to be like, okay, we can kind of modify this for you to make it work. And right now everybody's dealing with appointments, and like they've been modifying their system over the past 2-3 years since they came out with it to work with that. So it's like, okay, we just need to change like a couple dates here so we can get this working, and then like if we could just like make bigger groups so everybody can get in the same appointment, that would be fantastic. Like so it definitely helps us being able to keep track of everything and doing everything that we need to do. Still some tweaks that need to go on, but I mean,
but even so, like it's nice that Square, you can kind of shape that to your need as a company with how you're using it. Because I mean, I'll guarantee there's not many skate parks that are keeping track of anything the way that we are.
Probably not.
I could probably count off the top of my head, like in my hand.
Breaking Free and you guys are the only ones
Right.
that I know that. Well, the Wheel Mill
Rise
probably
pretty,
too, but
Rise
I don't.
pretty good.
yeah,
Yeah, Rise and Wheel Mill are too.
I like don't count them in the same category.
Right.
Yeah, that makes
they're
sense.
their own beast. But yeah, I mean, there's everything else is just here's the waiver. Okay, throw it in a drawer, throw it in a box, and then if you have to search for it, you do. But I mean, or if you get hurt, here, sign this. Okay,
Yeah, because they didn't actually keep them.
Or that, yeah.
just to make sure we have it.
Now, Breaking Free, I know they do a pretty good job because he runs his own podcast and
Yep.
he likes to talk about his business stuff on there.
Yeah,
and little 10 and 15 minute deals.
Yeah, we talked to him right before we opened, or like officially filed as a business, and like he was just kind of telling me, here's what to look for, here's what to watch for, and then there's even stuff where like I'll send him a message or an email, be like, how do you deal with this? He's like, I just don't. I'm like, all right. I forget there was something, I forget what I asked him, and I wish I remembered right now, but he's like, he said something really sketchy. And I told her, and I'm just like, we probably shouldn't do it that way. She's like, no, we're not going to do it that way. And I'm like, I hope it works out for him. But I mean, but then again, there's no real way to run a skate park.
No.
It's just
one
of those.
There's no like formula to put it in.
Yeah,
Right.
there's no okay, if you promote it this way, you're going to get this many people in the door, and if the weather's like this, this is what you're going to get. Like, no, it just doesn't work that way. So I mean, while it might work for somebody, and all the insurances are different, so you don't know what you're going to.
Although you only have like 4 to pick from, so
Right.
it's not like.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have a place like Penn Skate who's run his park like everything's by the book. Rules are rules, that you follow them or you're gone. And he's been around for 20 years, or you get a place like ECT that was just flying on whatever. I mean, they closed in whatever it was, 06, 07, but there was no rules, no rhyme, no reason for anything. But that's just the nature of it. It works for some people. Some places it doesn't work.
Yeah, running a business without a real good business plan has always confused me.
Sure.
As skate parks, it's like everyone's flying by the seat of their pants,
And
you're
even-
like,
You try not
I get
to,
it.
right? But it is, and I think that's what pushes investors away. People that are looking into, because and even banks are investors. You give them an outside the box business plan like a skate park, and they go, "What? No, not
It is
even,
like,
not even looking at it. Doesn't matter. Don't want to. Nope."
everyone they've ever seen before has failed, so why would they choose this?
Sure,
Right. But at the same
absolutely.
time, and I think I don't know if it's so much the fact that they fail financially as it is, the landlord is just, because I know with Grind Lab down in Harrisburg, that was their deal. Their landlord came in and said, we have someone that wants to rent not only the other half of the building, but they want your half, and they're going to pay us twice what you're paying rent. So get out. And they couldn't even think. They didn't even have enough time to be like, well, could we work this out? It was just, okay, you're out, these guys are in. And the joke ended up being on them when they got everything out. The potential tenant bailed on the whole plan. So now they have an entire building that the landlord now has to rent out. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, and even Incline Club was the same way.
I was going to say, them and Ollie's out in Kentucky.
Right.
That place, I don't know for sure if it was that they had a different tenant, but if you ever been out there, their building was real nice, and it had loading docks down like the whole building, and you're like, oh, they're paying a pretty penny
Sure.
for this
Sure.
spot.
Yeah.
Well, that's how the Flow, before they closed, the second one, I think, they were in they had their half of the building, and then the other half, I think, was like the DPW that was renting it to store bags of churned up pavement. So it was weird because like you're riding the skate park and then you look over and it's just these giant white bags for the rest of the building. And then they got into the one, I guess it was a Circuit City, And as soon as they announced that they did that, I'm like, they're not going to last. Because, and then they were running the air conditioning on top of that, and I'm like, guys, like, it's just not going to work. But I mean, I was at the second one and the third one. They were both super fun. But, you know, that's another one that just, they couldn't keep up with the bills.
But again, that comes into, you know, planning, having, you do, I mean, yes, you can throw a skate park together without a business plan, sure. You want to fly by the seat of your pants, absolutely go for it. But that also means that you don't have any plans in the future. You've just kind of been like, we'll see what happens, whatever goes with it. You know, if you come in with a business plan and you have a plan and you have a contract written up with your landlord and you have some inkling of like how long you want that to go on for, it gives you a safety net. So like us coming into it as a business instead of a nonprofit, like that's our safety net, knowing that there's some other potential way for us to earn income to make sure that we are taking care of the skate park. Some, you know, red tape gets taken away because we're paying things out for the skate park. So like you can plan it, but I mean, at the end of the day, any business, you can't plan everything. There's just no way around it. And that's always like the big laugh is like when you do a business plan, they ask for projections. And like if you're a business that there's no other business around, like an Olive Garden or, you know, something to base your numbers off of, you could sit there and be like, hey, we're gonna get 50 people a day. We know exactly what our numbers are. And like when I did ours, our numbers were super low, and the owners of the dome, they were realistic, right? You know, because I don't expect an overflow of people, and I don't expect a dead day either. I know that there's going to be some sort of balance there, but the owners of the dome were like, oh no, your numbers are going to be way higher. Well, you know, for us keeping track of everything all the time, our numbers were exactly what my business plan said.
Far off.
Like we had some busier days, but overall it went right where it was because it was realistic. But you get businesses that'll come in and get investors that have these astronomical projections of like, oh, we're going to make millions of dollars, and they crash and burn. And you're like, how was that okay for that investor to invest all of that money with those unrealistic numbers? And we're sitting here going, okay, we're not going to be millionaires right off the bat. We're not, maybe ever, but you know, we'll at least get you your money back and, you know, some percentage of it, whatever we agree on. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't want to make a little bit of money. It's either all or nothing. And you're like, oh God.
Yeah. Well, I think the other thing with the business plan too is you guys have an end goal. Like you want to have your own space, whether it's probably rent a building or build your own, right?
Right.
And like, I guess what is your end goal? And before this year, how long did you think it was going to take to get there?
So the end goal, and this is coming again from realistic standpoint because I don't live in fantasy land, and sometimes I could be a little crude on realism, was a 5-year plan. So in 5 years, the business needed to sustain itself at that 5-year mark. We needed to stop putting our own personal finances in it. The business needed to be taking care of itself, and it should be in its own space where it can continually run for however long after that. We have not seen where we're going to end up in that 5-year plan because it has just been so up and down. We've been open for 6 months. We ran the kitchen 1 year. We haven't been able to pull any loans in that are significant enough to get us to the next phase, which is building and or buying a building to make it permanent. And it's like, do you extend that? Do we sit back and go, okay, because like right now, projection-wise, as far as the business is concerned, being closed these 3 months, not being able to do anything, that's literally set us back 18 months from the initial goal of last year, where we were getting ready to potentially be able to take out a loan big enough to at least get a cement pad down and start building the actual building, to now we're 18 months away from that because we just literally crashed and burned and lost a crap ton of revenue to be able to utilize that for something else and to be able to show banks, hey, like we're doing really well, and now we have nothing, you know. So they have to look at, you know, the nothing that we had, the good months that we did have over the last year, but still looking at it, because most banks don't look at you as a business until you're 3 years in full rotation of bringing in revenue. We haven't hit that. We keep bouncing.
Yeah, you're like at year one.
Correct. Yeah, we keep crashing back to year one. I'm like, this is like a really bad Mario Kart game. Like, what is going on here?
So next year will be year one. As far as like a real.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
barring anything.
correct. Right. If anything else. So I mean, technically speaking, if we get to open in 2 weeks and everything goes as planned, we're able to get the funds up to pay the insurance and get that all started up, and we get that 2-week mark. We go from whatever that is, July. That if we don't get shut down, if nothing else happens, come next July, that will be our 1-year mark of fully going all year round, whether it's just the skate park or the kitchen, whatever part of the business is fully running all the time. So that should help us. But again, that's a year, and it's going to take another 6 months to run. So there's your 18-month mark right there. So that'll put us into the following year, that beginning season of potentially being able to get everything built, put up, ready to go. We'll see what happens.
Got it. Well, assuming everything is good, we should see you open in 2 weeks.
I hope so.
Have you done any you haven't sold gift cards? Have you been selling gift cards?
We have gift cards online. Most of our regulars either sent us donations, bought t-shirts, so we still see a little influx of that. We haven't been pushing it over the last 2 months because we didn't know once we went past that 15-day period of we're closed and we didn't know when we were going to be able to open. We didn't get pushy about anything. We're like, let's just see how things are and see if there's any real expectation of us actually being able to open again. Now we're at the point of real expectation. We at least know there's a 2-week window here where we're not going to be able to open, but after that we're going to be able to do something. So now we're going to start, this coming week, we've already started posting on our Facebook page, listen, we need to make X amount to get us completely open, be able to take care of the waivers, the insurance, and all that nonsense. So we'll start pushing the t-shirts again, the gift cards. Again, not pushing the memberships because I don't trust that what's going on out there is we may only get a couple weeks out of it and then be shut back down, but at least people can know that in some capacity we are going to be open as far as the skate park is concerned. How long we're allowed to do that, we don't know. So.
Okay. Anything else you guys want to talk about?
I don't think so.
No.
I think we touched on pretty much a lot of it, the history of the park so far.
Yeah.
Where you're at today. The only thing with gift cards that's kind of sketchy is if you sell a bunch of gift cards
and
now, then
open,
you're not generating money down the road.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. So it's like kicking the can down the road in a way.
Sure. No, absolutely.
So it's I've seen a lot of people not doing that just for that reason alone.
And it makes sense to some extent, but I also look at it, on our end, even if the skate park's not able to open with the gift cards, it might hurt us for a month, but the kitchen's still open.
Yep.
And we know that they can utilize that for the kitchen. They can take delivery, pick up, whatever they want to do. So it's not a waste on their end, and it's really not a waste on our end. We at least know that they're going to be able to utilize it to some extent. And that's worst case scenario, that we're not able to do the skate park at all, which isn't happening right now as far as we can tell. We're going to be able to open in a couple weeks, and everything's going to be peachy keen.
Well, all right. We'll be able to open. Peachy Keen's another story.
I'm going with peachy keen. Just let it go.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's end on that.
All right.
Peachy keen.
Peachy fucking keen.
Thanks for checking out another episode of the podcast. Hope you enjoyed this one. And hopefully we don't have to do any more of these coronavirus ones. So until then, go check out some of the other podcasts I've been posting on Instagram. Bunch of good ones out there, bunch of stuff I've been listening through. And, man, too many to name without missing some. But go check out Different Spokes, BMX in Our Blood. Let's see. Breaking Free Speech, Wrench Life with a Y, the Freedom 15, I think. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of stuff I've been posting, so just go thumb through those if you like podcasts, and if not, disregard. Follow GrindWorks BMX with @GrindWorks_BMX on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and GrindWorks BMX without the underscore on Facebook, Mixer, YouTube, TikTok, Anchor, Steam, I don't know, whatever. Wherever you want to follow it, we're probably there. If not, tell us we need to join whatever, Friendster or something, MySpace. I don't think there's a GrindWorks MySpace account yet.